Well, good evening, everybody. Wow. I have to tell you, I forgot how to do all this stuff. I'm asking Lance, what do I press? This is so foreign to me. It's been over 3 months since we've joined together on the Magic Collectors Corner. I am so excited about tonight. But let me give you a little pre-show announcements. We're going to start it in about a minute here. A couple of things. Tonight's speed share, so this is what you want to go grab, is something that's kind of a utility device in a trick. Not the trick itself, but a prop that is used to facilitate the trick. So does that make sense? That's a little unusual and it leaves a little bit open to your imagination. There's some type of proper apparatus that helps facilitate the trick. So there's that. And we're going to get started here in about a minute. Well, I can see by the countdown clock, it's 32 seconds past the time we were supposed to start this thing. And I got to tell you, the learning curve, it started all over again for me. I had to figure out Zoom. I had to upgrade my Zoom. And so it's just my muscle memory is completely gone. But it's so good to be back here with all of our friends on the Magic Collectors Corner for this very, very special October edition. And we're going to get a few things out of the way. Then we're going to get into the meat of the program. And let me tell you, we've got a lot of meat tonight. In fact, go ahead and just plan on, this is supposed to be a 2-hour program. Yeah, right. We're going to go overtime because there's so much great content tonight. So I'm just going to warn you in advance. So with that, let me welcome my partner in crime way back there in Studio B. He's going to tell you all the stuff you need to know if you're new to the Magic Collectors Corner as far as the technical stuff. Lance Rich, good to see you.
Well, thank you. As you didn't see me down the hall a second ago.
That's right. I've got to remove my pin, don't I?
So it's great to see everybody here. And if you too, like David, have forgotten how Zoom operates, down at the bottom of your screen, you should see an option to be able to raise your hand. You'll also see the chat down below. And I see already lots of chatting is happening in our chat there. And again, raise your hand when you have a question or when we get to the speed share towards the end of the show, if you have one of those anything but a trick objects that you'd like to show later on during speed share. Tonight is such a great night. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be back. And we really do have a full program. David's not kidding. So I'm amped up on coffee. And I say, let's go to it. Let's get to that meat. David.
All right, Lance, thank you so much. There we go. All right, so we're going to make a couple quick announcements. First of all, if you're not a member of our Magic Collectors Corner Facebook page, you need to join because that's where all the action happens when we're not here on a Sunday night talking face to face. It's a great, great community. We've got over 4,000 people who participate in it. And it's just go to Facebook, search Magic Collectors Corner, join. I hear a dog in the background. I don't know whose dog that is, but anyway, keep your microphones muted until it's time for you to talk. But anyway, join the Facebook page. You're going to see lots of great things and extensions of what we do here on our programs. In addition, you can go back and you can watch all previous 35 episodes. Yes, 35 episodes of our Sunday night get-togethers. They're all there. I had to go back and start watching some because I'd forgotten some things, and so it was good times.
You made sure you got in.
All right, very good. And somebody got in. There we go. Okay, that's good. Lance, remind me to the next time I do this to set the default to mute. as far as when people join the room. I think I forgot to do that tonight. Anyway, also, if you would like to be on our email list and get the emails when we do one of these get-togethers, send me an email, david@davidsandy.com, david@davidsandy.com, and simply say, put me on the Magic Collectors Corner email list, and you'll get the email blast that'll tell you when we're doing this, and it'll have the Zoom link, all that information in there, tell you what our topic is, and all that fun stuff. So david@davidsandy.com. Go ahead, write that down because you're going to need it for our contest a little later on in this evening. We got some great contests and some great prizes. So with that said, Lance, I think it's time to move into some announcements. Let's go back a little bit to the mailbag because a lot of our mailbag's gotten kind of full over the last 4 months.
Well, that's right. And we have a couple of mailbag escapes from the mailbag that pertain to tonight. And we're going to start. John Cox messaged me today or last night actually, and he said that October 24th is the 95th anniversary of Houdini's last performance. And check out this ad that John sent me. If you notice, it was actually on a Sunday as well. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. In fact, John sent me this as well. Now, this sold at a Potter and Potter auction earlier this year. And you can read about it on John's blog, but this was, John didn't realize that any programs from that night actually existed. So again, 95 years ago, tonight in Detroit, Houdini performed his final show. Pretty cool stuff. Also, in our mailbag tonight, I want to mention something that Jeffrey Sadowski sent in for us, and it pertains to Virgil. He put several Virgil things on the Facebook group, and you can see those as well. But one I thought was particularly cool. So let's take a look at it. He just received a poster.
Hello, fellow collectors. We just got this in today. It's kind of, we know that there's going to be a meeting coming up, and we know it's going to be Virgil Week, and we just got this back from our conservator. And you're seeing it for the first time that we're actually seeing it. It's a Virgil 3-piece. Never seen the light of day, and just got conserved and put on linen. And it's actually longer than our table. Actually longer than our table here, so let me get a better grip on it. Look at that, beautiful. Look how vibrant the colors are. And hopefully you guys can look at this, and we'll all have a fun time when we do the meeting, the Zoom.
Yes, and the dog approves as well. So that's a great thing. We're excited for the meeting. Thank you, Jeffrey, for sending us that. And I think we're going to get to it. And David, I think we have a birthday greeting to announce.
We have a great birthday greeting. In fact, this is one of the nicest guys in Magic. And Lance, you and I are so lucky because we get to see him this coming week. And he was on our episode of the Magic Collectors Corner where we talked about spook shows and
about this time last year.
About this time last year.
Yeah.
And it's the one and only Reverend William Rauscher. Happy birthday. How many is it, Lance?
It's 89. So Bill, I hope I know it was this week, and I hope you had a wonderful birthday, and I'm so glad that you're joining us tonight.
And we can't wait to see you this next weekend. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a little bit. So Lance, what else do we have to talk about before we get into the program?
Well, actually, it sort of pertains to this weekend. We want to thank everybody for all of the warm wishes this summer when we were really honored to receive the Alan Slate Award. And and this weekend when we are receiving the Milburn Christopher Award. Both of these things kind of in appreciation for the Magic Collectors Corner. And obviously the Magic Collectors Corner wouldn't exist without all of you guys coming to our corner. We both received so many warm wishes, both online and at the Magic Collector Expo. So we really appreciate that.
And it was so great, to, well, first of all, before I get onto that, for those of you who have not been with us since the beginning, which was about 1.5 years ago, Lance and I started this. We just thought we'd do it for a couple of weeks. Let's get collectors together. Let's do a Zoom meeting and have some fun. And by golly, that turned into like 34 consecutive Sunday nights. Maybe, yeah, I think it was 34. We ended up last November in David Copperfield's incredible recreation of Tannen's Magic in Las Vegas. That's where we broadcast live. And, you know, people have thanked us for doing this, but I have to tell you this, and I mean this with all sincerity, and Lance will agree. This has been as much fun, as rewarding for us as it has been for anyone else. And we could not have done this without the help from people who, when I'd call and say, hey, will you be a guest on, or will you share your collection, or this or that? I mean, that's the content, because, you know, it wouldn't happen without you. So we want to share not only the Alan Slade Award, but the upcoming Milburn Christopher Award with all of you. So thank you very much. And Lance, on a sad note, Alan Slade, just a little over a month ago on September 19th, he passed away.
Yeah, and he was such a supporter of our art and of promoting magic as an art form. And he really contributed a lot to this world. He
lived 90 wonderful years, and you're right, he was a profound supporter of magic, magicians, and just the advancement of the art of magic. And right. So that's quite something. He's left quite a legacy there. And moving right along,
and one more happy birthday I want to say. Tom Ewing, 70 years old today. So happy birthday, Tom.
All right, happy birthday, Tom. All right, so, you know, one of the exciting things that happened just a couple months ago in the city of Las Vegas, Nevada, in August, I got to meet a lot of people face to face, and I got to see what you really look like instead of in these little rectangles on your computers. It was at the Magic Collector Expo that was so expertly put together by our good friend Bill Smith. It was one heck of a time. The speakers were awesome. The venue was just great, and I know Bill thanks Stan Allen for all of his help in coordinating things at the Orleans. But it was a great get together of magicians, in spite of the fact that we were all masked up, which is okay. We wanted to make sure everybody was safe, but it was a good get together. Bill did an excellent job, and the good news is, in just a few months, you're going to get a chance to experience it again in the city of Austin, Texas. Lance, that's coming up in April.
It's a great city.
Through the 16th.
It'll be a great event.
It'll be a great event because, well, I would be remiss if I didn't say one of the highlights of the Las Vegas get together, other than the great talks and things like that, and just the camaraderie and fellowship, was the once in a lifetime opportunity to go into David Copperfield's incredible museum and be shown around. The docents, everybody did a great job. Chris Kenner, Jim Rollins, the list goes on, just leading people through. And it was a highlight. But there's a highlight in Austin, Texas, too. In addition to all the talks and all that kind of stuff, people are going to get to go see what I consider one of the greatest live entertainment shows on the stage today. I've said this to many, many people. It's called Esther's Follies. Yeah. Some people go, wait, what? No, let me tell you. Esther's Follies is one of the greatest live entertainment experiences on the stage. And the good thing is it heavily features magic from our good friend, Ray Anderson. So that's all included. So go to
fellow collector.
And fellow collector. Yes, yeah. This guy's got some posters that make me drool. But anyway, go to magiccollectorexpo.com, check it out, get registered, and I'll say because it's limited. There's only, I don't know, maybe like 50 spots left or something like that.
So for all the Houdini files out there too, you know, this features a trip to the Harry Ransom Center where you get to see all of the Houdini files, and I'm looking forward to it because I haven't been there before. But Austin's a great town. Esther's is a great show. And I'm really looking forward to the Ransom Center and, of course, all of the speakers.
If you've never been to a Magic History or Magic Collectors Conference, you have not really experienced camaraderie in the magic world. Magic conventions are great. I love them. that you're in for something brand new when you go to a collector event, because it's just fantastic, and you'll make lifelong friends. I guarantee it. Okay, let's move right along.
We're ahead of schedule, David. We're ahead of schedule.
Oh my God! So we may come in under 4 hours then. So October is full of magic. Of course, we've got the special edition of the Magic Collectors Corner. Of course, we have National Magic Week, but on October 30th, there is probably what will be considered one of the greatest magic auctions of all time for collectors and historians.
Right.
Our very dear friend, Ken Klosterman, passed away, as most of you know, and this will be your opportunity to become a curator of many of the things that Ken was so passionate about in his incredible collection there in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. And you notice I said Cincinnati, because
just
that's
like
how,
him. Yeah.
That's how Ken would say it. He never said Cincinnati, it was Cincinnati. But this will be your opportunity to do that, because Potter & Potter, our friend Gabe Fahuri, has just spared no expense to put all this stuff together, display it, and make it available for fellow collectors and historians. And so, Lance, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you share something with us.
Yeah, I'll just say, and funny you say Cincinnati, I do want to give a quick shout out to Michael Mode, who did an interview with Ken a couple of years ago. I was actually listening to it earlier today. It's a fascinating interview, and he talks about stuff I'd never heard him talk about. So check out that from Michael Mode. But
that's on the Magic Collectors Corner, right? No,
but I can put the link on the Collectors Corner.
Yeah, put it on our Facebook page so people can see that.
So, but back to Gabe. Speaking of Facebook, this week, Gabe and Potter & Potter Auctions also released a video, the final tour of the Salon de Magie. And so if you have been there, it brings back great memories. If you haven't been there, it's very cool to see it all. I have my Salon de Magie book here as well. It's a great book. I was flipping through it a couple of days ago, and of course the catalog for the auction. But so check that video out. But for us, Gabe has kind of created a highlights reel of some of the things that are actually going to be at the auction. They've moved them there to the brand new facility, so you'll get to see that if you haven't been there yet. And let's roll it right now.
Hello everyone in Facebook land, it's Gabe Fahuri here, and you are entering into our auction gallery here at Potter & Potter in Chicago. A little Facebook only walking tour preview of our Salon de Magie auction, which happens on October 30th. That's next Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time. You can visit us live here in the gallery to participate in person and raise your hand and place your bids, or live online, watch a video stream of the auction, which will take place, as I said, 10 a.m. Central Time on October 30th. Anyway, enough of the housekeeping out of the way. Let's look around and see what we've got in the sale. If you haven't looked at the catalog already, we spent a lot of time setting up on display a lot of the beautiful items from Ken's private museum, the Salon de Magie. So in the cases here, you'll see everything from a giant Nelson prediction chest to an automaton down here, a minstrel magician. That's lot number 1 in the auction. We have a sterling, maybe not a sterling, but we've got a coin tray here with a letter of provenance from Carl Germain. This was used by Morrow, his contemporary, on the Chautauqua and Lyceum circuits in the first part of the 20th century. In this case, we've got on display Germain's papier-mâché head from his spirit cabinet routine. We've got the headdress worn by Fu Manchu, a talking skull used by the great Leon, Germain's floating ball, Blackstone Magic Company rarity, that's the Bathing Beauty made in Colon, Michigan in the 1920s, the late 1920s. And then continuing around the room, so many more highlights to talk about and see. Germain's blooming rose bush. Here's the trunk that he used to troop around the world, or the country anyway, with it. Inside, Carter's beer barrel. This is an early version of the old square circle known as the Magical Gardener. This was used by Carl Germain. And above it, the only example I have ever seen of this one-sheet version of this weird mystery, the reincarnation of Radama featured in the Germain show. In the next case, a lot of incredible artifacts. We've got, not to be overlooked here, a miniature millet bell, or a small millet bell. That was Hofzinser's own millet bell. Don Allen's cups, a spirit seance bell used by the Davenport brothers. Beautiful wood turnings from Thayer. Props decorated by Okido. We have Eugene Laurent's linking rings and a road case there. And then moving on to the next case, I know we're going quickly, but there's so much to see. Thumbprints from Marjorie's brother, apparently Walter. We have beautiful photo of Bautier de Colta. Alexander Herman relics on the bottom shelf, including pieces of his Mephisto costume. We have the cards used in his show in this bouquet trick. We have mind-reading props used by Germain again. Beautiful photos of him performing the rose growth there in a little frame. John Martin birdcage, and so on and so on. On the floor here, we have a spirit seance chair. Nothing tricky about it, except it was used by Lamar Keene. If you've ever read the book The Psychic Mafia, this is Keene's chair from which he contacted the dead over and over and over again. Charles Larson's card wheel, a beautiful billiard ball stand, the likes of which I have never seen. The top of it comes off and can be fitted into this little stand, and now you have a tabletop version and a clockwork version for the stage. So that's made in Germany by Conradi. You see the base there with the star design. In the next case, a duck pan, or I should say rooster pan, used by Litzka Raymond to produce her rooster China Boy. There's Charles Larson in his museum in New York. There's the card wheel we just looked at. The original cover art for Houdini's book. That's the Magical Rope Ties and Escapes from 1922. The bell box used to trip up the Boston medium Marjorie. In the back, Houdini's belt buckle behind his brother's mirror from his dressing room, and there's a picture of his brother Hardin in the back. A Thayer nest of boxes used by Frederick Eugene Powell, and so much more. Keller's candlesticks, a display of Al Koran. We've got pieces made by Del Rey, a trick used by Nicola, rare card rises, a whispering Buddha by Thayer, and then, not to be outdone, the center table used by Harry Keller in his illusion show, right here, gold leaf, filled with traps and all kinds of devices in the tabletop. On top of it, we've got the devil's head operated by pistons hidden inside the table, Keller vignette of Keller and Valadon posters above, the beautiful levitation image, the Valadon Well I'm Damned image here called Gone in the Keller show, and this rare window card of Keller's spirit cabinet, his perplexing cabinet mysteries. The next case has more apparatus, Virgil's talking skull, a silk gun made by John Martin, another Herman prop down here, Del O'Dell's P&L sand and sugar canisters, Punx's close-up case, and next to it, even more rarities. We have Okido's Pigeon Vanish, the only one he ever constructed for his own use, cannonball vases, card stars, Adelaide Herman's fan, a Thayer wine and water trick, and other German micro magic, a jumbo Neyhart Houlette, rare Thayer die box, ball chimney, and the largest snuff vase I've ever seen, that one made out of brass back there. We'll do a quick sweep around the gallery just so you can see a little bit of the layout for auction day. We've got a beautiful wall of posters here, a few rarities up on the wall on display, from Jacobs, stock posters, a Fu Manchu. I've not seen another like that. This beautiful Hatch show print piece for Marquis. And then continuing around the gallery, we've got Blackstone, Giulianelli, John Mulholland's own table and Buddha tubes, which he made for his own use. If you peek in there, Shelby, you'll see his address label. So in case he got lost, he could find his own way home. And then continuing around the gallery, we've got the Flight of Time with Houdini parts used by Hardin, a beautiful Donald Holmes clock act, T. Nelson Downs coin ladder. You'll find that in The Art of Magic, written and published in 1909. Robert Houdin mystery clock, Houdini upside down in the water torture cell, a beautiful litho by Dangerfield of London, about 1912. And of course, the piece de resistance in the auction. We have the light and heavy chest of Robert Houdin on this beautiful bench, made to exacting specifications by Carl Williams. A quick personal story about how I got to know Ken Klosterman. Back when I was 19 years old, I visited his Salon de Magie for the first time, and we were looking at this book here, the Dr. Jack's Book of Mysteries, which is the close-up case that Jack's used when he would appear in nightclubs and in fancy hotels, in fancy restaurants in New York. So we opened up the book, and of course I was in awe. I saw what many people consider to be the first close-up pad ever used. Jax would put it on top of the book and then perform on a miniature stage for the patrons that he was appearing before. And also inside the book, of course, are all these props that Jax used for many tricks that now are standards. Well, as we were looking at the case, I saw something that I recognized from the Tarbell course in magic. This little Buddha, little coin purse, and a few other props in there. And when Ken saw how excited I was and that I knew that that routine had appeared in the Tarbell course, he said, "You're 19 years old? How do you know that? Who are you? We got to write that down." Well, a few weeks ago, we were giving some final tours in Ohio of Ken's collection, and I found inside the box, and I've left it here maybe a little bit selfishly, my business card from when I was 19 years old. And on the back of it, Ken's handwriting about where I had found that routine written up. So, just kind of a little personal anecdote about something that means something to me, and in a way kind of set me down the path toward magic collecting, magic history, and knowing my friend Ken Klosterman. Just thought I'd share that with you. So that's been a lot to take in. I've been talking and talking and talking. I hope you have enjoyed a little sneak peek of the auction. Again, October 30th, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Any questions, get in touch. David and Lance, thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, good luck at the auction, everyone.
Gabe, thank you so much for sharing that sneak peek behind what's going to come up this Saturday for the auction. I had the opportunity to visit.
It's pretty cool
Ken's.
if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think just about everybody here is into that sort of thing. But you know, that brings me to some a point. You know, Gabe was highlighting some of the things that were highly collectible, and I want everyone to understand that you can start collecting magic on any level. You could collect business cards. You could collect playing cards with signatures. Lance has started his own collection that probably costs, what do you think you have in each of those? A quarter, Lance?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So tell them what you're collecting, and at some point it is going to be one, I mean, it already is, one impressive collection.
Well, okay, you're going off our agenda.
I know it, but you said we were ahead of schedule.
That doesn't mean add stuff.
Okay. All right.
But I did share it a while back, and it's a collection of Christmas ornaments that have been signed by people. It was actually inspired by Ken because he had that collection of cufflinks, and I thought, what's something I could do that nobody else would have? And so I have almost 200 Christmas ornaments now that have been signed by people, including Ken Klosterman. So it's pretty cool.
So see, I brought that up because I knew that you were inspired by the Klosterman cufflinks. So that was my segue into that.
And I'll say again, thank you, Gabe. And if the only thing you get from the auction even is the catalog, it's awfully beautiful too. So
it really is beautiful, and I mean it's going to be a collectible itself. In fact, I heard through the grapevine that one of our regulars on the Magic Collectors Corner accidentally ordered two. Patrick Daniel messaged me and says, "I have two. So if anyone would like to buy one, have him contact him." So he's on here. He's also on Facebook, and if you can't find him, send me an email and I'll put you to him in touch because he's got an extra. It's a beautiful piece. It's a beautiful catalog. Well, Lance, one of the things I missed most about not getting together every Sunday night is, first of all, our next regular feature. But secondly, it's that song that introduces our next regular feature. So I'll say to the band, hit it.
Well, you forget what you're supposed to ask.
Oh, What time is it, Lance?
There we go.
It's time to ask Adele so that she can tell everything about the Blackstone show because she was there.
There you go.
There you go. Boy, I've missed that song. You know, for 35 consecutive weeks, I was singing it in my sleep because I heard it every Sunday night. But of course, that's the way we introduced one of the greatest living legends in magic, Adele. It's good to see you. You look as good as you did 18 months ago when we started the Sunday night show. How are you, Adele?
I'm fine. And how the heck can I follow what you just said with everything else, with everything about the auction and the people and everything? How can I follow that?
You can follow anything. You know, I could bring out a line of elephants doing a clogging or river dance, and as spectacular as that would be, you could follow that because you know so much, and you've shared so much with us over our little Sunday night shows. And so I understand from Lance that we're going to take a little bit of a twist this evening, because normally our viewers ask Adele a question, but Lance, what are we going to do tonight?
Well, Adele, I think you have a question that you would like to ask the viewers.
I do.
So I'm going to pull that photo up.
Can you put the picture on the screen? Okay. My young friend, magic collector Ben Wynn, sent this picture to me and wanted me to tell him about it. I couldn't. It had to be before my time because Blackstone has the dark eyebrows and he looks a little bit younger than he was when I joined the show. There's a monkey, there's somebody with whiskers, and I think it was called Whiskers, but I never knew that. And I didn't see it. And I was an assistant. I was a box jumper. Box jumper assistants do not. Can you still leave it up on the screen?
Sure.
Thank you. Box jumpers don't get a chance to see every single illusion because a lot of times they are the illusion, or they disappear, or they appear from nowhere. And I must, if it was on the show, I don't know about it. I don't remember. I never saw those costumes. And I want to know if somebody in the audience has ever in their time of going to magic shows, have they ever seen the Blackstone show in the early 1940s or before that? I know I'm asking a question. I don't know how many people were out there, but maybe they know something about it. I would like to know what that illusion was. Was it really called the Whiskers? I don't know.
Well, actually, Adele, David Charvet has raised his hand, so I think he might have an answer for you.
Okay. Hi, David.
Hi, Adele. Boy, good to see you.
It's good to see you.
That picture, as you said, it's in the early 40s, and the man with the whiskers is Pete Bouton.
Was that
And
Pete? Those whiskers?
That's Pete's wearing the whiskers. And in the monkey suit is Harry Jr.
You have to be kidding.
No, that is what I've been told.
How
I don't know if that's
old
true.
is Harry Jr.?
Not very old, obviously. But
So-
he's kind of crouched down there. So
David,
there you go.
would you kind of quickly describe the routine?
Well, the whisker, old man in the whiskers, it's a transposition where there's a banner is held up, and this character, the man in the whiskers, and in the later Blackstone Jr. show, which is on film, you can see it performed, where the wizard interrupts throughout the show and then finally comes out with a gun at the end, threatening Blackstone with this gun. Blackstone holds up a banner and they fire the gun, the banner drops, and there's a monkey there instead, a gorilla in the Junior show. And what happens is the wizard pulls off the mask and the costume, and it's Blackstone. So it's a transposition effect.
Well,
Well, I didn't know that. And I never saw a junior show. So that's why I didn't know. And it was a mystery to me. And I hope Ben Wynn is looking so he can find the answer to this too. And I don't know how many other people, but when you're an assistant, you don't get a chance to see things like when Blackstone turned me into the red rose bush, and behind me is a picture of the original red rose bush that Joe Long took. And I'm peeking out from the side and you can't see it from here, but that picture, the red rose bush, but a rose bush can't turn around and look at the rest of the scene. The rose bush is standing still and I don't know what's going on. I didn't see the flowering tree. I didn't see the fountain. I know Jim Rollins asked me about the fountain one time and I said, what fountain? Because I never saw it. And all kinds of things that assistants don't get a chance to see because they're hiding or they're behind, you get the picture.
right.
Anyway, but this is a delight. Who's that in the picture with, what is that?
Well,
Who is
David,
that?
David, what has happened?
Incidentally, can you hear me okay?
Oh, no.
This is the Mr. Whiskers costume from Harry Jr.'s show. It's in our collection.
It's in your collection?
Yes, this is from Harry Jr.'s show. He did the Old Man and the Whiskers.
It
No.
is a little hard to hear you, David, but
Is it?
yeah.
Can you see my eyes?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I had no idea it was that. Oh,
I think
So-
Bill Smith used to wear that actually in the show.
thank
really-
thank
I
you,
think
thank
Bill
you,
was the
thank
winner.
you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I had no idea that was the question, but as soon as she showed that picture, I thought, well, I've got Harry Jr.'s mask for this,
And-
so
and I
I
believe-
ran down and got it.
And I believe on a previous Magic Collectors Corner, Lance Burton mentioned that this illusion was one of the inspirations for his sword fight routine.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So pretty cool connecting all of these dots. And you know what, Adele, we wouldn't have done that had you not asked your question.
You answered my question. Yeah.
Somebody just said in the chat, put the mask back on. So I'm a little offended. All right. I'm just kidding. So Adele, before we, since we've answered your question, I have to ask you, how have you been the last, since our paths crossed? You look fantastic.
I've been fine. I finally got, I think I'm ready to maybe get out there in the magic world. I've been in hiding, and I want to get back to seeing people in person again.
Mhm.
And this is great.
Well, and
While I'm here, I know you have a whole lot of things that are coming up. Can I say a couple words about
Sure.
a couple things? I want to thank Lance and David for inviting me to the ring number 129 meeting. And I didn't know about it until maybe 2 hours before it was going to happen or something like that. And I went on it and I was there and it was so wonderful to be able to just sit in the audience and look at the people in the members come up one by one and do what was the featured performance that night was mystery boxes. I never saw so many beautiful mystery boxes of all sizes and colors and shapes. It was amazing. I was thoroughly enjoying it. And then it got to the point where they were going to take a break, I think. And then what they didn't, and Lance, he surprised me. He introduced me to the audience. I was having so much fun being an observer. And here he is, he has to say something. And he did say that in the beginning of October 6th to be exact, but the meeting was on the 7th. It was 74 years that I had joined the Blackstone Show. And it was a memorable day. I'll never forget it in my life. I'm not going to go into it. But the fact that he announced that, and then there were so many wonderful messages that were sent to me on Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but I have some, Lance helped me by sending me some of them and everything. And I would like to pick out three.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to Trixie Bond for writing to me. She's one of my favorite lady magicians, even though I never saw her in action except at a convention in Texas where she was going around not doing anything except just entertaining people with her magic. And I love that. She invited me to go to the Texas Association of Magicians convention in 2009 to be a guest speaker. And I did that. And things happened there. I met Walter Blaney for the first time. And that was another story, which I'll tell another time. And she said, since you're going to be a guest speaker and we're providing your room for you, you have a roommate, and it's Suzanne the Magician. I never heard of her, but I'll tell you something. It was so wonderful to be a roommate to Suzanne. And she and I have kept in touch over the years, if not at conventions where we could be roommates together, but just regular, just texting each other. And it's a delight. So that's two things. Then I want to thank Gay Blackstone. She wrote to me that she was glad that I was joining the Blackstone family. Gay, if you're there, bless your heart. I was a member of the Blackstone family before you were born. And this is no joke. When I joined the Blackstone show, it was 2 weeks in the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. October the 6th to October 19th were my 2 weeks there. And when I found out I had to go traveling, it wasn't just a gig for 2 weeks. I was going to travel with his show. I'm 17. I had to have my parents come in and okay the fact that I could travel with him. And he spent some wonderful time with them a number of times, not just once, and made it very clear to me and to them that when you join his show, you are a member of his family. His family is traveling. His family is on the show. We're family. So, Gay, I was a member already, and I thank you for allowing me to be the member of Junior's show too. It was just a wonderful thing for me. And now the next one. David, Sandy, and Lance Rich have been so wonderful to me. And to everybody, all those collectors, look at what they've done with these this is his 36th time that we're together. He has brought so many magicians and so many people who love magic together. We all have a say in this. And what he has done and what they have done together, they have been receiving awards that are beautiful and memorable and historical. And on October 30th, which is another banner day, besides the Potter and Potter auction, the Milbourne Christopher Foundation is giving David and Lance the prestigious Milbourne Christopher Ambassador of Magic Award for 2021. Bravo, bravo. Good luck, my friends. I am so happy that you give me this time to say congratulations to these two wonderful guys who have done so much for the magic world. They are super ambassadors already. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Well, Adele, that was very sweet. And we are just honored to be joining the ambassador family. because I know you have previously been honored with that title and with that award. So thank you for those words. It's really, really nice.
Thank you very much, Adele. It's wonderful to see you. And we will see you. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we may see you in this situation in about a month here. So we'll be posting some stuff online. So we got to move on. Lance, are we ahead of schedule still? Oh, yes, kind of, maybe. All right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
one of the features that we did on the Magic Collectors Corner when we met every week was something I call What Is It? That gave our viewers an opportunity to grab something out of their collection that'd been sitting there for a while, and they go, I don't know what this thing is. I like the paint job on it. I don't know what it does, but anyway, so forth and so on. But and then we would find out, because there would be people in our audience who would say, oh, I know what that is, or I've got the instructions for that, or I knew the builder that made that. It was one of my favorite segments. And that little segment kind of evolved and became a regular thing that just organically happens on our Facebook page. People post things on there and said, I found this, or I got this in the collection. Anyone know what it is? And by golly, it seems like 9 times out of 10, somebody will come up with the answer. So I have a What Is It thing here. Lance will share a little bit about our excursions over the last week. But this was something, it's a box like this. And interestingly enough, it's kind of hard for me to do this. The bottom comes off, take it off like that. And so that you can see all the way through it like that. In fact, it actually disassembles. And I know you can't see this, but all the individual panels come off, and they go back together. I'll hold this up. They go back together because there's little dowel pins there. So I don't know whether you build the box, show all the panels, and build the box, and then you make this production. So there it is. I put the sides back together, and then it goes on this. But it's like a, and I'm using the term of the time, forgive me if it's politically incorrect, but the box is kind of like a Jap box, only on steroids, because every one of these 4 panels have compartments in them. Every one of them. Drop down. I don't know if you can see this or not. I can get them to open. That one opens all the way around. There's panels with a compartment inside. The paint job, the gold is a little Thayer-ish, but I feel like maybe there would have been other colors if it were Thayer. There's the dragon on the front. The tops of them have even paint on the edge. So
yeah, Phil Schwartz says not Thayer.
Okay, I didn't think it would be, because I felt like the construction would be a little bit different than paint. If anyone knows what this is my What Is It?
Well, I don't see any hands going up right now.
But email me if you know, or I'm going to post it on our Facebook page. So if you know
Yes.
anything about it, help me out. And if you have something in your collection that you don't know what it is, put it on our Facebook page. That's what it's there for. And, we'll see if we can help you out. When I say we, I mean the entire Magic Collector Corner community. All right. I think, Lance, isn't it about time we get to the moment they've all been waiting for?
Yes, it is. So
all right,
let's go and
let's do it.
This is sort of our introduction to our topic of the night, but we go a long way to get there. It starts with a road trip, heading actually to pick up some auction.
First stop, Chicago, Illinois. We were there to pick up some recent auction winnings from the Potter & Potter Auction House, and it gave us a chance to see the beautiful new Potter & Potter auction facility there. It's pretty great. And then we were off across the country, through Illinois, through Indiana, and into Ohio, where we stayed at a genuine vintage 1950 something roadside motel. That's it. And in fact, Janet Lee had just checked out. Now on to the auction. This happened on my birthday too, so I had this Homemade birthday apple pie. The apples were grown by the auctioneer's son. The crust was made and baked by his wife. Let's see Gabe do that. And this was a big magic auction weekend because not only were we bidding live here in Ohio, but I was monitoring the Habersatt and Ewing auction on my phone and my iPad. Potter and Potter had an auction of mostly non-magic related things that weekend, and there happened to be an auction in Houston. I'll let David tell you more about that Houston auction and how it sort of led us to do this show tonight. But in the meantime, we had to get back home. And once we were there, you see, we have to do a lot of unpacking. But really, isn't this the part that we all love? This is the great part about magic collecting. Getting to open the boxes, play with the stuff, read the books, and see what all of your scores are. I love it.
Well, and that stuff is still in our music room as we speak. We haven't had time to put it away. But anyway, yeah, it was like that Saturday, Lance's birthday, September the 25th, 4 auctions going on at the same time. And we were trying to monitor and participate in all of them. We were there in Ohio live. I was on the phone bidding in Houston, Texas. Lance was on the, go ahead.
So tell us about, well, I was going to say, so tell us about that Houston auction.
Well, okay. There was a little bit of word that leaked out. Lance saw it on the Magic Castle Facebook page that there were some items of a magical nature being sold by an auction house in Houston, Texas. It wasn't a my collar looks, it's really driving me crazy when I saw this. Lance, the auction house in Texas, in Houston, was not Potter and Potter. In fact, they specialized in rare antiquities and high-end paintings. It was almost like a Christie's or Sotheby's, you know, but they were in Houston, but they had these magic things in there. So I start looking through these things. I thought, well, that's cool. That's cool. And Lance, you want to go take it from there? And so I decided I wanted to maybe bid on some of this stuff.
Sure.
But
So they had some sawing in halves, and one of them was labeled John Daniel Sawing a Woman in Half Illusion. Well, David calls Mike Caveney and says,
well, because I knew if this is the John Daniel Sawing a Woman in Half, this is the very first thin saw ever.
But you also know, you know, Potter and Potter has sold a lot of John Daniel's stuff, so that doesn't make sense for it to be there. So David naturally goes to the source of sawings. I don't think I have my sawing book here, but the sawing book had just come out, and David calls Mike Caveney and says, "What is this? Is this John Daniel?" And Mike looks at it and says, "No, that's not John Daniel. That's Virgil's sawing." And there's another sawing in the auction as well that was just labeled "Cutting a Woman in Half" or "Cutting a Woman."
It looked like something from an old traveling carnival or something like that. It had shown its age, and they had no idea.
So Mike says that is Virgil's sawing as well. Read the book. So we had homework. That night we read that chapter. I've now since finished the book, and by the way, it's a really fun read. If you guys haven't read it, it's a great read. It really is a lot of fun, a lot of information. But that night we read the Virgil related chapters, and so it's like very exciting. And as David said, at that auction, he was on the phone with that fine art auction house essentially in Houston. They know nothing about what they have really. Their researcher has been trying to figure this stuff out, and so those Virgil sawings led us to here. And how better to get into Virgil and to learn about Virgil than from the man who wrote the book which David has sitting behind him there. There you go.
Was that my cue to pick it up?
That was your cue. So David Charvet wrote this wonderful book, and David Charvet is here to tell us all about Virgil. So David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Boy, thank you for welcoming back. I was at the first one of these, 36 of these ago. And yeah, the book, there it is. And this is 30 years ago that I wrote this book. 30 years ago, I was 30 years old, which I have my 60th birthday coming up in about a week. So there we are. But 30 years, that's half of my life ago, I wrote that book. And it was quite the process. And it's an amazing story. A lot of people know Virgil. They've seen the posters, but they don't know that much about him. And they don't realize he was the last pretty much of that classic era illusionist who toured the world, like Carter the Great and a lot of the others, Raymond and the others who went around the world. Virgil did it right at the end. But before he made the world tour, he had an entire career that led up to the ability to do that world tour by honing this act and this show. But Virgil's story begins in 1900. If you want to go to the first photo, Lance. That's him. That is Virgil. He was born Virgil Harris Mulkey. Last name is Mulkey, M-U-L-K-E-Y. Born July 17th, 1900, near Eugene, Oregon. And unusually at the time, unusual for the times, his parents were divorced when he was 5 years old. You don't think of people getting divorced around the turn of the century, but they did. And he was raised by his mother. If you go to the second picture, that's his mom and Virgil. It's about 1908. And it was about a year after this that Virgil saw his first magician, a man named Doc Hoyt, who was appearing at a county fair near his home. And Virgil was amazed. He saw him do coffee and milk and all the classic things you read in Hoffman's Modern Magic. And it set his course. He knew at that point he wanted to be a magician. He loved show business already. He had seen the Buffalo Bill show, and he really was enamored with all things show business and magic. He even saw Annie Eva Faye perform her spirit cabinet, which led into something we'll see a little bit later here. His first magic trick he bought from a friend. It was a ball vase. He paid 15 cents for it to figure out how it was done. And that was set him on his course, so to speak. During high school days, when this picture was taken, he was known as Magical Mulkey, and he built all of his own props in the school wood shop, and not just small props, things like the spirit paintings, but also big stuff, the tip over trunk, even an Aga levitation he built in the school wood shop. He left high school early in 1918 because World War I had started, America was in war since 1917. He enlisted the end of October of 1918. And it was fortunate that he did. He went to San Francisco, was going to be shipped overseas, and on November 11th, the war ended. So he was lucky he did not have to go overseas and get shot at. But instead, he went to college. And if you look at the next picture, he went to the University of Oregon in the fall of 1921. And very unusual for a magician to go to college in those days. Maybe unusual today, I don't know. But he studied psychology, journalism, art, science, history, stagecraft, and drama. All courses that you would want to have if you were going to be a magician. His big break came when he was in his last year of college. In 1925, you go to the next photo. It was on New Year's Eve, 1925, the Heilig Theater in Eugene. You'll see there near the top of the bill, there's Magical Mulkey. And the theater manager was a man named Mac McDonald, who became a great friend of Virgil's and great promoter of Virgil's. He loved his act, and he said, you know, you should be in vaudeville. And so McDonald contacted the Ackerman and Harris vaudeville circuit, which was a Western vaudeville circuit, and convinced them that they should hire Virgil. So he quit college. He was about 2 weeks before graduating. He quit University of Oregon and got his trunk together, packed up, and went on the road for $125 a week. You go to the next photo. And again, an act of some standard things, but many original things. Those tables that you see there actually were sold at the Virgil auction, Potter and Potter auction that they had. And they're beautiful. And he hand painted those all in Egyptian style. But during those years in vaudeville, he befriended and was good friends with McDonald Birch and helped Birch with his show as well as doing his own act. You go to the next photo. This is him in about 1928. And 28 is when he appeared at the IBM convention. and when the magicians first really got to know who Virgil was and what he did. And Virgil realized, though, that vaudeville, he was not making a ton of money being a magician and doing not necessarily a standard act, but again, an act that was not spectacular and unusual. It wasn't Houdini, of course. So at $150 or $200 a week, you couldn't get rich. And Virgil knew this. So he decided to go back to the Northwest, and he went to a little town called Port Townsend, Washington. You go to the next photo, where he opened a theater with his friend Mac McDonald, who was a theater owner in the Northwest, and they opened the Townsend Theater in 1928. And in the basement, Virgil set up a whole workshop, because besides being manager of the theater, he also performed his show in the theater and built many new props, many new mysteries, including a buzzsaw in the early 30s, one of the first buzzsaws, along with Blackstone and Horace Golden, which you can read the story in Mike Caveney's book. And he also had people working in the show. One person he found who originally started in the show as an usher, if you go to the next photo, was a young lady named Julie Capriati. She lived in Port Townsend, and Virgil, again, had her working as an usher in the theater, and then realized that she would be a great assistant. So he put her in the show. And on this particular effect, which is something that is original of Virgil's, she is laying across the blades of two swords. And in rehearsing this, she actually cut her leg, and Virgil was concerned. He went to see her every day, bandaged her leg, make sure she was okay. And it started a romance, and they fell in love. And so that was the beginning of Virgil and Julie at that point in their lives. Julie became a big part of the show while it was at the Townsend Theater. There's the disembodied princess, again, built by Virgil in the basement shop. It's a beautiful prop. If you see color pictures, it is in that auction catalog when Gabe had the auction. And it's spectacular, all hand painted by Virgil. And again, Virgil was always wanting to keep things kind of on the cutting edge, although it's the Egyptian disembodied princess. You'll notice that control board on the right side, which is, again, somewhat science fiction-y, so to speak, where he would turn the dials and make her body disappear and dematerialize. Virgil and Julie, again, they were together all of the time. And by 1931, they decided it was time to get married, May 31st, 1931. And he stayed in Port Townsend for the next 2 years. The two of them worked and worked and worked with the goal of building a big show to go out on the road. And in 1933, go to the next photo, Virgil hit the road with a 10-ton show, and it toured the West. Next shot, if you would. And Virgil called it his Mystic Circus, again, wanting to play on both circus and magic. And it was, again, a very big show. And the two of them did it. They had assistants that traveled with them, a large truck. There's a little drawing of the truck there at the bottom of the poster. They also had a live lion in the show, Sheila the Lion, who traveled with the show as well. Those were rough days, though. This was the middle of the Depression. They worked everything from high school auditoriums to huge theaters, including, if you go to the next photo, the mammoth, and I mean mammoth, Fox Theater in San Francisco, which unfortunately was torn down, and many consider it to be one of the greatest movie houses and presentation houses ever made. 5,000 seats, and Virgil headlined there Christmas week of 1933. And there you see the truck parked right out front. The show, again, traveled throughout the West. Go to the next photo. And was, again, a big production, as you can see. The problem was Virgil found out that packing this show up, it took time. There's many times that Julie told me they were not out of the theater until 3 o'clock in the morning. So they got to a point where they decided we need to rehearse the packing as much as we rehearse the show. And they did. They rehearsed to a point where they could take this 10-ton show and be out of the theater completely 20 minutes after the curtain came down. And they did that by packing throughout the entire show, which is something they did for the rest of their lives. They were masters of packing. And it did not affect the quality of the show. They would not sacrifice the effect just to get out of the theater faster. They always put on a huge, big show. And again, the Depression happened, and in the mid-30s, Virgil took out a spook show and midnight show, which created extra income during those days. And it was up and down for their career at this time. They would have great dates, and then sometimes where there wouldn't be a lot of people because people couldn't afford to go to the theater, a lot of them. But in 1939, go to the next photo, they met a man named Henry Hudson Davis. Now, Davis had previously been the manager for George Marquis, for S.S. Henry, for Melroy, and most importantly, for McDonald Birch. And the only reason he left McDonald Birch is that Birch's father-in-law took over the booking of their show. But Henry Hudson Davis was the man who really put Virgil and Julie to work. He had a systematic method of booking the show. And in 1939 and 40 alone, 1 year of 39 and 40, they performed 500 shows in 40 states across the country. Henry Hudson Davis was a master of promotion and really put them on the road. And he is the one who shaped their future really in show business and in the magic world. And they worked and worked and worked again all through the early days of World War II. If you go to the next photo. That's his hometown of Eugene. That's 1941. That's 4,000 people came out to see him. And it is the hometown boy makes good. And next slide, if you would. That's in Seattle, the Palomar Theater. And again, he still worked some vaudeville. The tail end of vaudeville was still around, but his main forte was working this big show in auditoriums and theaters. And Julie used to tell me, she said, a lot of people would call their show a school show. She said it wasn't. A school show was kind of a derogatory term. She said the only reason they worked schools was in many cities where they were at, many of these small towns, the high school auditorium was the only auditorium in town. And so they had to work the school auditoriums, but the show was anything but a schoolhouse magic show. You go to the next photo. Again, when the war broke out, they had trouble getting gasoline. You also had trouble getting assistants because a lot of the men were being drafted who had assisted them in their show. So they figured out a way to do their entire big show with just the two of them handling everything on stage, backstage. Julie was a dynamo. She would be backstage pulling the curtain, bringing the props out. And between the two of them, they could present a full evening big magic show with illusions, including the sawing they did with just the two of them. But it was after World War II is when they both decided it was time to look ahead with the goal of making a show that would tour the world. So from 1946 to 1950, if you go to the next photo, they enlarged their show even bigger to the point that it became 26 tons of equipment. That's 50,000 pounds of equipment that they built and changed and refined. Virgil was never content with having props just the way they were if he bought something from a magic dealer. He always refined things and always changed things. But the show, again, became a big production with special scenery. If you go to the next photo. His own front curtain, which was painted by Dorney, actually. So Mark and Sue Holstein. That was, again, all in purple and gold. It was really a beautiful curtain. And that was there when the audience came in. Again, if you came into a theater where you'd been every week and you see this curtain, you know it's going to be a different show. The opening was a witch's cave, all in black light, where the witch is stirring the cauldron. There's a flash and a puff of smoke, and the devil appears at the top. A set of steps then appear out of the air, and the devil whips off his mask and his cape, and it's Virgil. That was the opening of the show. The next scene was the fast magic, fast production. That's the artist's dream illusion with silks and ducks and chickens, and Julie popping out at the end dressed as the rabbit. Other parts of the show, next photo if you would. A very elaborate Chinese scene. You can see the scenery, and I wish you could see this in color. It was just spectacular. Again, and Julie's appearing out of probably the smallest dollhouse that was ever built. She was not a big person, but it was really a production when she appeared. The next photo, if you would. Unusual things. Virgil, again, taking a standard bit. This is a P&L shooting through a woman, which he changed the gun and the design of the scenery, and the assistants are wearing weird green masks, and he called it the Weird Execution on Mars. Made an entire science fiction scene out of the P&L shooting illusion. Next, if you would. A Japanese scene with the sand canisters, the sand and sugar, where a small canister full of sand overflows the large canister, all presented with authentic Japanese costuming, Julie wearing a wig and obi, and Virgil in a Japanese robe, and the scenery, everything set correctly for that scene. And again, very methodical and very artistically done. Next one, this is the substitution trunk. A lot of people did the sub trunk, but Virgil presented it as a scene at Grand Central Station. Special scenery, special music, everything made to make that one effect stand out. The closing of the show was an Indian marketplace where Virgil would walk in and perform some Indian style magic. And then the gentleman you see on the left would walk over and apparently take him prisoner and shout, "Infidel." He came into the harem, the infidel. The scenery would raise away, and we go to the next photo. The gallows. He was led up the gallows, and the noose put around his neck, covered in a bag. The gallows, the trap drops, the noose falls away, the bag falls away, he's gone, and Virgil appears dressed as one of the natives. And that was the close of the show. Again, it's a 2.5-hour production. Pretty remarkable. And they decided by 1952 the show was ready to go. They had Card Mondor, who was a young magician who worked for them. He went out to book the show, and he went to Australia, New Zealand, and started booking. And away he went. And Virgil and Julie followed closely behind. And in 1952, in January of 52, they got the show ready, shipped it to Vancouver, Canada, and on February 7th, 1952, they left on their world tour. Now, there is no film of Virgil and Julie performing their big, giant show, which is a shame because these photos just don't do it justice. But there is film, which Virgil, before he left on this tour, bought a 16 millimeter spring wound motion picture camera. And for the next 5 years, he photographed what ended up being 4 hours of film of their travel around the world. We're not going to show you all 4 hours, but what you're going to see is about 9 minutes I've compressed, and some of the more interesting magical portions of the show you'll see. So Lance, if you'd like to start the film, we'll take a look at the Virgil World Tour. And I'll fill you in on what's happening on some of this as well. This is a ship, the Aorangi it's called, which left from Vancouver again in January of 52. They went across the Pacific, stopped in Hawaii, with the goal being to open in New Zealand. They arrived in Auckland. The crazy thing that happened was they arrived in Auckland and they were told that none of their animals could come up to New Zealand because they had to be killed, and they were killed. And all the outpouring from the people in New Zealand to help Virgil and Julie recover all of their animals it was a tragic thing, but it was a huge amount of publicity for them when they came into town and into the country. So all of the theaters were full in New Zealand from this unusual bit of publicity that happened. There's Virgil and Julie with koala bears. They traveled across the length and breadth of Australia. This is taking the train to Queensland. Julie told me this was unusual because they had to make 3 stops because the railway gauge, the width of the tracks changed 3 times. So they had to unload the entire show and reload it 3 times on the way through Queensland. They were in New Zealand for 18 weeks through 20 cities. They were in Australia for 42 weeks in 27 cities, nearly a year alone in Australia. They worked, again, from coast to coast, north to south, east to west. And here you can see unloading some of that show, 26 tons. This is flying from, again, the Queensland area back to Melbourne. And Virgil and Julie oftentimes would fly ahead, and the show would travel by train or by truck to get to them. And here's the train unloading in Melbourne, the trucks with the show. And having assisted on an illusion show, I can tell you, it's a lot of muscle to get all those crates and all those trunks out of the trucks to the theater, unload them. Those dome top trunks are wardrobe trunks. They had a line of 8 dancers on the show, and with multiple costume changes, they carried literally hundreds and hundreds of costumes for this show. The scenery they used, there were 33 different scenes, sets of scenery in the show. So it was a major production, equivalent to a Broadway show. This is leaving Australia in May of '53. And they were going to Hong Kong. And again, you can see some of the crates and the props. When they arrived in Hong Kong, it was during the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, who coincidentally is still on the throne today. So this is long ago, but it's not that long ago, I guess you would say. This is the Apollo Theater in Hong Kong. That's Julie. Here she is, scoping out the theater front. They were in Hong Kong for 4 weeks at the Apollo Theater, so a month in Hong Kong. And this is going up the river to Bangkok. And they actually had to unload the show mid-river and put it onto little boats, which would take it off to the theater, the Chalam Krung Theater in Bangkok, where they played in July and August. And they were in Bangkok for 5 weeks. And again, you can see the theater fronts. And from Bangkok, they went to Singapore and Malaysia. They spent 14 weeks between Singapore and Malaysia. And there's those trunks again. It was constantly moving, constantly moving. And I asked Julie, I said, when you left to go do this tour, did you know you were going to be gone for 5 years? And she said, no, we left and always said that at the end of each week, if we were in the black, if we were making money, we'd continue. And so they went for 5 years. Here's Singapore, the Majestic Theater. And interestingly, some of these theaters where they appeared, she said, were what they called bare walls rental, meaning they had to hire the stage crew, they had to have the scenery, everything had to be set, and they had to pay for all of this. She said even some of the theaters, they had to pay for the toilet paper in the restrooms. So at the end of the week, she said, if they made money, sometimes they didn't make money until the 5th or 6th night in the theater during a week run, she said, because of all the expenses involved. But they wanted to do this tour, so they kept going. And again, you can see the juxtaposition between antiquities and modern day still going on in that part of the world in the 50s. And this is in Ipoh, Malaya, or Malaysia now. And these films, by the way, have never been seen. Virgil and Julie had them for themselves. They never showed these to people. This is the Majestic Theater in Penang. And again, they were 14 weeks through Singapore and Malaysia. Here's Calcutta. They were in Calcutta in India for nearly half a year, 24 weeks in 7 cities. And they took in, of course, a lot of the local culture. Here's a snake charmer. There's Virgil behind and with a cobra. And Virgil asked at this place where you see this, he asked for many Indian magicians who could come and show them the actual magic of India. And there's Julie looking thrilled to be wrapped with a snake. And from India, this is Pakistan and in Karachi. And he wanted to make an entrance. This was their first stop in Pakistan. So Julie said they could have used motor trucks to carry the show, but no, they decided, let's use camel carts to transport the show. So all the show was unloaded from the train and put onto carts with camels. This is the main marketplace in Karachi. And of course, a normal market day, but what comes through the middle of the market but Virgil and his entire show with a procession of camels. And if Jeffrey Sadowski, if you're watching, look closely, you'll see your 3-sheet poster right there being led through the streets. There's another one going right through the streets of Karachi. The destination was the Palace Theater, where they worked for a month in December of 1954. And they were in Pakistan a total of 15 weeks during this time. Now to England. They were in England for a total of 39 weeks through 1956. And they appeared in not just London, although they did appear at the Finsbury Park, which was the equivalent of the London Palladium if you had a full show, the Finsbury Park Empire, then to Scotland and Wales. And they finally closed the tour after 39 weeks through Great Britain on the Moss Empire circuit at 39 cities. They closed in Belfast in November of 1956. This was the last tour date that they did of the world tour. And then it was back to America in January of 1957. So really, it was the end of an era. They traveled this route 5 years and saw things that many people of the era had never seen or would never see. So it was really a remarkable testament to Virgil and Julie and their entire company that they were able to pull this off again.
That's
by
amazing.
themselves. It
David,
really
and
is.
you mentioned people never seen or had never seen before. This video footage that you just shared with us here on the Collector's Corner, this has never been seen before. You had this transferred just so that we could share this evening. So that's incredible, and it certainly shows how much passion and hard work they invested in taking this show. I mean, I complain if I have to carry an extra briefcase to my stand-up show. For heaven's sakes, Jimmy Christmas, this is amazing.
Well,
I am humbled.
2.5 hours, and they were ready to do it again. In 1957, they were planning a second world tour. Right after they came back, they wanted to go out and do it all over again. But what they found out was in the 5 years they were overseas, Virgil said the world entirely changed. Entertainment changed, meaning that one-eyed cyclops in the living room, television came in to all of these places where they had been. And they realized that theater audiences were dwindling from all reports. Television was in, and they canceled the second world tour before it even began. They said no, they couldn't do it because they knew it would not be successful. So TV was the thing that killed the full evening show at that time. So they didn't stop touring, though. They toured the United States. They had a show, and in the 50s, it became really hard to book a magic show in the US, and there were lots of other magicians who experienced the same thing. So if you go to the next photo, Virgil tweaked and changed it, a show that they called One Fantastic Night, which featured hypnotism, and he would hypnotize people from the audience. And Julie would also present her ESP and clairvoyance, thought control, all the things you see here on the photo. And she also performed upside down writing, mental gymnastics, so to speak. It was really an unusual show, but it also had a lot of magic in it. But the billing has no mention of magic in it, as you can see, although for all intents and purposes, it was still the Virgil and Julie magic show. They worked throughout the 1960s with this show. And in 1967, they were approached by their friend Milbourne Christopher, and Christopher wanted them to appear on his big magic special. Now you have to understand, magic was not that, there were not that many magic shows on television. Mark Wilson had his show, but by the mid 60s, late 60s, there were really no magic specials. You had 3 TV networks. You didn't see magic every day. It was a big event. And when they were booked on this show, which was hosted by Gary Moore, who was, again, a popular host of the day on television, it was considered an honor for them to appear on this show. And in this one performance, which you will see in a moment, they were probably seen by more people than he performed for in his entire career. And Virgil, as I mentioned, had seen Annie the Fay back when he was a boy present the spirit cabinet. And he'd also seen Willard the Wizard, of course, present the spirit cabinet. They were very good friends with Harry Willard and Joy Willard. And they saw the Willards present the spirit cabinet. Well, Virgil and Julie presented their own version of the spirit cabinet. And you're about to see it, and you'll give you a taste. It is really the only sound recording that I know of film of Virgil and Julie performing. But you'll see what he sounds like, how he moves, and you'll get a hint of the type of personality that he was. So take a look.
And here now, direct from a triumphant tour of Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and England, is one of the most original illusionists in the world of legerdemain, the great Virgil.
Now we're about ready to go into the spirit world. And if you don't mind, I'd like for you to act as a committee, a spirit circle. Now first we have previously nailed a board to a platform. I wonder, Gary, would you like to look at it to be sure it's really nailed solidly?
Yes, and I would like to also vouch for the fact to the audience that none of the four of us here know anything about how this works. This is not a set-up job. That is secure, sir.
Now you've already been given pieces of cotton bandages. And Julie will act as a spirit medium. I'm going to ask you to please bring your bandages over. We'll tie them securely about her wrists, about her ankles, and about her neck.
All right. May I have an ankle?
You may tie the ankle, if you will, please.
I know which part to take. Put on a sailor square knot here.
Gentlemen, we have hammers and nails. I'm going to ask you to please nail her down to the floor and to the back of the board.
Nail her to the floor and the back of the board.
Very well done, gentlemen. Would you be seated in your chairs, please?
All right.
Now, gentlemen, are you all thoroughly convinced you've really tied her securely and have nailed her well to the floor and to the board? Are you all convinced you've done a good job? Very well, I will now place her into a deep hypnotic trance. And while in that condition, we will call upon the spirits to carry out their various manifestations in the cabinet. Now, I would like to call attention to a hammer, also a board into which we have started 2 nails. I will now call upon the spirit carpenters to please drive the nails into the board. Would you step into the cabinet, please, gentlemen? Examine her carefully. Examine her wrists, her neck, her ankles to be sure she's still fastened. Now you will notice the nails have been driven entirely through the board. I would like to borrow somebody's coat. Could I borrow your coat? Do you have anything in your pockets you would like to remove? Loose change, watch, pocketbook, knife, bottles, anything you might happen to have in your pocket that might fall out.
No bottles.
Thank you kindly, and you may be seated if you will, please. And we will treat your coat with respect And with a gentleman's coat, I'm going to show you something bordering on the supernatural. I will now call upon the spirits to please put on the gentleman's coat. Would you like to come into the cabinet, please? Would you come over? I want you to notice that she actually has the coat on. The arms are really through the sleeves, out the back, yet she's still nailed to the back of the board. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Would you like to be seated in your chairs once more? This time I will call upon the spirits to please remove the gentleman's coat.
Understood.
Would you like to put it on? Thank you so much. Now we come to the part of the spirit seance in which I invite somebody to go into the cabinet with Julie. Would you like to volunteer?
Yeah, I want to see how this is done.
Would you take a chair, please, in the cabinet?
Where, this side? Well,
If you will.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you are going into the cabinet, you wouldn't mind, would you, if I would place a cotton bandage about your eyes? You know, it's plain that spirits always work better in the dark. And this will make the spirits think that you are in the dark.
Oh, boy.
Now, if you will turn around, please, and be seated on the chair. Just sit right over there. Don't sit down till I tell you. That's it, right there, if you will, please.
Okay.
I might mention that many times when a gentleman sits in the cabinet with Julie during one of these spirit manifestations, that they feel cold chills running up and down their spines, and cold, clammy hands touching them on the shoulder.
Oh, boy.
Now, once more, watch the front, watch the back, watch the spirits at play.
Weird. She didn't move.
Wow. What incredible video, David. My goodness.
Yep, that was CBS TV. That was broadcast on January 1st, 1967. So again, an era when you didn't see a lot of magic on TV, but again, Virgil was 67 years old doing that, and Julie was about 10 years younger than him. So there you are. I say it's amazing to see, and that is the only sound footage of the thousands of shows they did all over the world that was actually recorded. So
Now,
and Virgil,
there was a reason for that, wasn't there?
There was a reason for it. There was a reason for that, and the reason being Virgil and Julie were very secretive. They were very, very secretive about everything they did, and they did not want this magic to get in the hands of just anybody. They were, again, very, very, they were sacred. The secrets were sacred to them, so they really did not want to expose it to stage crews. They didn't, an example, I'll give you a quick story. In 1964, they had worked the Brooklyn Academy of Music, their only date they did in New York in the theater. And Mark Letty, who booked the Ed Sullivan Show, was in the audience. And he wanted them to appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, which at that time was the biggest show in television, to be a feature on the Sullivan Show doing the thin sawing and the dancing Hank. And Virgil and Julie thought about it, and they told Mark Letty, well, we'd have to expose the workings of these things to the stage crew and the technicians in the TV studio. And so, nope, we're not going to do it. And I would say that Virgil was probably the only person ever to turn down appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show. So that
Wow.
the secrets again were sacred. They were absolutely sacred. It wasn't about money. It wasn't anything. It was about the fact it was magic, and no one was supposed to know how it was done.
Wow.
So that's it.
And-
But
And,
following,
and then at some point in their career, the magic community started recognizing just the.
they did. In 1971. You go to the next shot there. They received the Masters Fellowship, which is the highest award that the Academy of Magical Arts, the Magic Castle, can bestow, and they received the Masters Fellowship for all of the years that they had performed, again, and the thousands and countless millions of people that they had entertained. You go to the next photo. The awards were at the Century Plaza Hotel. They performed the Spirit Cabinet, and there you see Irene and Bill Larson, and Nani and Mark Wilson, and Julie and Virgil. And that was the night of the awards. And while they were on that trip, again, they'd been doing the thin sawing for about 8 years at that point. And Virgil realized that more and more people started to do the thin sawing. You have to realize he had the second one that was ever built. And so he started looking for new props. So he went to John Gahn, go to the next photo, and had a brand new illusion made, Robert Harbin's Zigzag. There it is. There's John Gahn in the back. There's Virgil and Julie checking out the Zigzag as John was building it. And they performed that for a couple of years. And then Virgil found out that everyone started to do the Zigzag. So they took it out of the show. They always want to do things that were different and things that were unique to their show. And they did. Through the 1970s, you go to the next photo, they were working all through the 70s. One Fantastic Night was a show. And again, magic, hypnosis, ESP. And their last date that they worked was September 30th, 1978. The week previous, they'd been at the Abbott's Get Together and performed at the Abbott's Get Together. Some of you watching may have seen them at Abbott's in 1978. Their last show was in Mountain Home, Idaho, right out in the Northwest, right where it all began. After basically 60 years of working, Virgil retired in 1978. Imagine a 60-year career.
Wow.
Pretty remarkable. They retired to their home in Olympia, Washington, which they had built with their own hands. They built this beautiful ranch house, and that at the bottom of it is water. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And it's the back, you see there's a brick building. That's their warehouse. It's a 40 by 60 foot, 2-story warehouse that had the entire show in it. And Virgil and Julie lived out the rest of their lives there. And in 1986, they were honored by the Magic Collectors Association. And Virgil was 86 years old, and it was a pretty exhausting trip for him. And he came back and had a slight stroke, and he was in an assisted care facility when I met him face to face in 1986 in June. I had talked to him once before on the phone about 5 years before when I was working on the Jack Gwynn book. And I'm showing him pictures of their lion, Sheila, who they gave to Jack Gwynn when he got too big. Sheila got too big to work in their show. So they gave him to Jack Gwynn, and he used him in his show for a bit. So that's my meeting with Virgil, and he was a great guy. I started working on the book. Virgil died in 1989, and in 1990, a few months after he died, I started working with Julie on the book. We spent a full year working on the book. I would travel from my home near Portland every weekend, basically for a year, and I'd spend the day with her, usually a Saturday or a Sunday. And we worked for over a year on the book, and it was a great experience to meet her and get to know her and all of these remarkable stories that she was able to tell. It was just fabulous. And then the book came out in 1991, and Julie passed away appropriately, I guess, that you'd say if someone has to pass away appropriately. It was on February 14th of 2000. She was known as a sweetheart of magic, and she passed away on Valentine's Day of 2000.
Wow. So this book, The Great Virgil, you wrote when you were 30 years old.
Yes, sir.
One of our viewers in the chat asks, what attracted you as a 30-year-old, first of all, to Virgil and Julie, to the point where you wanted to write a book?
Well, I like people, again, it's much like Jack Gwynn. I'd written the Jack Gwynn book when I was in my 20s. And I'm always fascinated with people who spent their entire life performing, again, all over the world, like Gwynn and like Virgil. But when they pass away, poof, they're gone. They were forgotten. And in an era, most people will know Houdini and maybe Thurston. People didn't remember Jack Gwynn. They didn't remember Virgil. And it was a shame, because they should, as you can see, and as you just saw, they had fascinating careers, and their life story and the story of their shows is really remarkable. And it's something, as they say, it's a hackneyed phrase, but we will never see it again. It will never happen again. So,
David,
I
in this incredible book, near the back, you show the route of the great Virgil,
yes,
and all of the places they played. Now, as I scan through this route, I don't see a lot of Chicago's or Los Angeles or New York City. I see places like Pecos and McCamey and Alpine and Fort Stockton and Eagle Pass. That was part of his success, wasn't it? That
yes,
he went to smaller towns where he wasn't competing with anyone. So it's a big deal when Virgil came to town.
it was like the circus coming to town. You know, a circus would come once a year and Virgil would come once a year, and you'd see this thing that you had never seen before. You'd never expected to have a big Broadway style production show up in, you know, Scottsbluff, Nebraska, but it did. And he never appeared in St. Joe, though. But as I always say, if you look at that route in the back of that book, I would say that there is nowhere that, you know, within 50 miles, I would say, of where anyone lives in the U.S., Virgil probably appeared. So wherever you live, he appeared within 50 miles of where you are now sitting, I would say, at some time in his life. So pretty amazing.
And because obviously he was not only a great magician, we've only scratched the surface on his ingenuity. You mentioned that he changed everything. But yes, he not only changed everything, those changes were improvements, which we'll see in just a moment, but he was a very good businessman. I mean, he was one of the few magicians that retired, I mean, obviously at a beautiful home, with some money in the bank.
Yes, and he was buying, no matter what, when they would go on, wherever they were in the road, they would send money back. Julie's brother was a stockbroker, and so they would take part of the week's earnings and send it back to him, and he would invest it for them. And they also bought property, their real estate throughout the country, which he would buy and sell. And again, because he had a college education, it helped. He understood business and understood what it took to keep that show on the road. And again, that thought that as long as you're in the black, you keep going. They kept going for 60 years. Pretty amazing.
All right, so David, you have probably about 500 of these books left in your garage? And no,
there were 500 total printed. That was 30 years ago. They do show up. They do show up, though. You find it.
So this book is a collectible, but it is available. In fact, when we decided to do this show on Virgil, as most of us do, we scour the internet, and I found one on eBay, and I immediately purchased it. And the thing about it was in England, and it still has not arrived, but because of Lance and I's little trip last week, in this great collection, this great library, which Lance affectionately is excited about, this collection we bought last week pretty much doubled the size of our library. There was this book. So here in another couple of weeks, I'll have one from England, which I'll have an extra. And look there, it's signed by
Julie. Signed by Julie.
Signed by Julie as well. So
yep.
This is
and
the one.
If you open up the cover, just to the flyleaf at the opening, it's limited again to 500 copies. That is actually an original program cover from their world tour that we put in each of the 500 books. We bound them in. So that's actually from the 1950s.
That's pretty neat.
So for all of our friends on the Magic Collectors Corner, this is the book to start searching the internet for. The Great Virgil by David Charvet. It's a wonderful book, and you know, we have so much to share this evening. So with that said, Lance, you know, one of the people who was probably as close to the Great Virgil and Julie as anybody throughout their career. I mean, they were extremely close, and we talked about the Virgil sawing, and David mentioned that Virgil's thin sawing was the second one ever built, ever created. Right. Well, that means there was a first one.
That's right. And that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna. Well, no, you go ahead.
Well, that first one belonged to somebody, and it was to John Daniel. And we are so privileged this evening to have the lovely and beautiful Kathy Daniel on the show with us tonight, who was a very good friend of Virgil and Julie. And Kathy, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Well, we can't see you. I don't know if you.
I should punch. I have no idea.
Well, the fact that we can hear you is good. I don't know if your camera's turned off. Down there in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom, it might say stop video or start video. If it says, click on start video if you can.
Okay.
Well, no, that's stop video. All right, so I feel bad because I talked to you earlier and you got all dressed up and fixed your hair.
Oh, I didn't get all dressed up, I'll tell you that.
But at least we can hear you. So I don't know why we can't see you. It's the craziness of technology. But anyway, you have some wonderful stories because you had a wonderful relationship, you and John, with Virgil and Julie. Can you just tell us how you met in the first place?
Oh my gosh. John loved Virgil. And I think the first time I met them was at one of the Magic Awards show when they did the Spirit Cabinet. And anyway, after that, we used to go up to Olympia, Washington to see them every year. We would go up, we always drove because we made a little vacation out of it. And we would go either in October or, let's see, October or May, while kids were still in school, because we didn't like to travel when everywhere we went there would be kids. And of course, our daughter was in school too. But anyway, they were such wonderful people. Now, to get to the house they lived in, well, David knows. David was there many times. You wore booties when you went in the house through the sideway of the garage. And I remember the first time we went, we had Michelle with us, and she was still in grade school at the time. And she was the first child who had ever been in that house. And we were so nervous because she was like 7, 8 years old, but she was always in good behavior and there were no problems, but we were very concerned. But to get to the thin model sawing, when John first built the sawing, and as you know, it was built for Irene Larson. The first time Virgil saw John perform the sawing, he just loved it and really wanted it. But then John was at a magic convention up in the Pacific Northwest at one time, and Virgil said, please, John, will you please build me one? Long story short, John agreed to do it. And Julie, for those of you who never knew her, was extremely tiny. And so Virgil came down to Southern California, South Pasadena, for several days, and just to make sure. He wanted to see, he had the measurements and all of that. And he kept telling John, cut it down a little more, cut it down. It is probably the smallest thin model sawing that was ever made. And have you opened yours up yet, David? Okay. Anyway, when Virgil came down, it was the first time since he and Julie had been together that they had ever been alone. And John told me Virgil was calling Julie 4 and 5 times a day because she couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep without Virgil being there. But the sawing was amazing. It is okay, so I still have the original. You now have Virgil and Julie's. That was the only authorized thin model sawing ever made. Person who, I'm not mentioning any names, but the plans were stolen. And that's why so many thin model sawings came on the market. A lot of people know the story, so I'm not going to get into that. But even after Virgil passed away, John and I would still go up to visit Julie. And you were talking earlier about, or David was, about a TV and stuff. When Julie's brother moved her to an assisted living place, when we went up to visit, we noticed there was no TV or anything in her room. It was like a one room with a kitchenette. And so we went out and bought her a TV. And we had people there at the place hook it up for her so she could watch TV. Long story short, after she passed away, her brother sent us that TV. She never had it out of the box. She didn't want to watch TV. It was, yes, there it is. Now that's John with Irene in the thin model sawing. Yes. Now Irene was 5'3". I was 5'5", but having been a dancer and very limber, I was able to do the sawing. So, and as many of you know, Irene and I were very good friends.
Julie was what, about 5 foot tall, would you say, Kathy?
Who, Julie?
Julie, yeah.
Oh, yeah. She wasn't any taller than that, that's for sure.
No, and about 80 pounds, as they say,
Yeah.
dripping fat.
Extremely. Extremely.
Right.
I can remember one time, let's see, this was before John and I were married. He had the boxes that were, like when Virgil would shoot the cannon, and the boxes would be hanging from the ceiling, and then he'd shoot the cannon, the boxes would come down over the audience onto the stage, and of course, Julie would get out of this tiny little box. John had those boxes there, and I can remember him saying, Kathy, see if you can get in this box. As limber as I was, there was no way I could get in that box because she was so tiny. But they were such nice people and wonderful, and I still have a whole file of all the letters that Virgil wrote, John. And I guess after this, I'm going to have to pull them out and read them. And
Yeah, you definitely will.
yeah, I will. Is there anything else you want to know?
Well, Kathy, thank you for joining us. We're gonna look at some footage that includes that sawing that you mentioned. If you just want to hang around, and you might have something to contribute here in a little bit as well.
Okay.
All right. David, you were muted. Are you unmuted now?
I'm unmuted now.
Okay. Well, this has been exciting. So as we've been building up to, David, if you want to introduce this piece, I guess you were on the phone with the auction house.
We talked earlier how on your birthday, I was on the phone with the auction house in Houston. Mike Caveney had told me previously, that's not just any sawing, that's Virgil's sawing. Not only his first Selbit style sawing, which later became eventually evolved or morphed into the Wakeling sawing, and also the thin model sawing, which was the second one ever built, which John Daniels then saw. So anyway, I was excited about this, and so I had my good friend Scott Wells go over to the auction house, FaceTime me. I wanted to see these things, and I wanted to bid. And so I bid, and not only did we get sawings, but we got a whole lot more. So I guess you'll share the video, right?
I'm going to share the video now. So
this is kind of like Storage Wars and Pickers.
So this week off, we went to Texas to pick up the sawing, and there we discovered a whole lot more. So check. Now, here we are in the back of the auction house as David pulls the vehicle around to the loading dock. As we checked in at the lobby, it was nice to see a Liechtenstein and a Rothko hanging on the wall as we pick up our little painted pine boxes.
As we examined the illusions, we noticed a couple of pieces of hardware missing here and there. Well, says the auctioneer, come out here to this shipping container. He opened the door, and it was like stepping into King Tut's tomb for magic pickers. Look at this. It is filled with all sorts of magic, arts, antiquities. It was an overwhelming experience. And the great thing about our magic community is that when you have questions, you can always call your friends who are smarter than you.
Okay, all right, so Mike, there's something inside this red case. Some kind of a prop, and I haven't opened it yet, but we're gonna open it, and I wanna see if you can tell just by cracking it in there. Can you see it's something red and gold?
Is it a base of something? It looks, they are colors.
Do you see that, Mike?
Well, yeah.
Let's pull the top.
So wait a minute, is that a glass-lined trunk?
Yeah, I bet it is because...
Oh yeah, because this other case over here says glass.
Because that says glass and it's number 30.
Yeah, there you go. That's I think, a Thayer glass-lined trunk.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's exciting.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
So, all right. Well, it's kind of like, storage wars here.
Yeah.
So,
And there are books. There are
boxes of books.
You're kidding.
No.
No, the books, this is can you see me or no?
I'm just showing them the books.
Yeah.
I see the books.
Yeah.
But all these hardbound books.
There's a Tannen's catalog stacked on top of a Benson book.
Really?
So it's just like a hodgepodge of
Yeah.
stuff.
All right.
What do you think this is?
It looks like
What is that?
almost like an Abbott's paint job, like a panel to Mignon or something.
It's a square circle.
Oh, there's the
That's
rest
what
of
goes
that.
to that. That's Abbott, right?
Spectacular production. It's basically a big ass square circle.
And it's Abbott's. That's Abbott's.
I mean, that's part of it.
Is that a doves
This is
or balloon to doves?
Yeah.
Something.
Chalet. It's a chalet, right?
So,
But it is.
you know what? This is how. There's a little compartment inside the tip over trunk. And
So we can obviously see it's a tip over.
Yeah. But it looks like there has been a rabbit or something in there.
Yeah.
Could you use that as a stool? You know how I have a stool in the bottom of my tip over? So that
if you have to go to the bathroom?
No, so that when I appear out of it, I'm not like cut off at the waist, so that I'm standing up higher.
Let's see. I'm not sure what this is, because this has this. It's almost like.
Oh, it's spandex,
Right.
isn't it?
Like it's supposed to look like a solid box, but it's like the low compartment could expand because of that.
That's a balloon to bald eagle. Look behind you, David. Look at that.
Sawing in half is a pretty big deal, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Now we're off to Dallas.
So we're just in time for Houston's rush hour.
Yes. Time that out perfectly.
Yes. This is it, right? There's Egyptian. I mean,
there it is.
Magic Island. I was like, that's Egyptian motif, and that's an Egyptian revival-ish building.
Probably won't be able to see the Sphinx on the roof very well because of that overpass.
You probably can from that other overpass. But there's Magic Island.
They were in the middle of remodeling it and trying to get it all fixed back up to reopen, and there's the Sphinx.
There you can kind of see him peeking his little head out over there. There he is.
Now we know that Virgil never stopped playing with an idea, never stopped perfecting it. So off we were to Dallas, Texas, with 2 Virgil sawing illusions in our trailer. And there we met up with Will Baffle. Now see, I've known Will since I was about 17, but it's only been recently that I've learned that Will is the Virgil guy now. In fact, he just acquired the middle step in the Virgil sawings. And for the first time since 1969, all 3 sawings were together.
I'm standing behind the oldest sawing aluminum half owned by the great Virgil and Julie in existence. This was built in the early 1940s. Many consider it to be the great granddaddy of what many of you know as the Wakeling sawing. This particular prop has literally been all over the world, and you can see by all the scratches and nicks all over it, all the wonderful memories and sense of wonder that it gave to countless audiences. I'm just proud to be here with it.
Hi, I'm Will Baffle, and I'm standing behind the 3rd of the sawings that the great Virgil made. This is actually the father of the Wakeling sawing, but there's a lot of bells and whistles on this that are not mentioned and even known about. But this was built back in the late 50s, which then Mark and Marlene Evans bought this from the great Virgil in 1969, and I bought this year in 2021. This is a great piece of history.
After all of these other sawings, and after all of the inspiration from Zadie Sungar, through Torchy Towner, through John Daniel, Virgil created this, what is possibly the most beautiful thin sawing ever built. This came along after the Virgil World Tour in the 1959-1960 era. You see a couple of Virgil touches here. The wedge base was added to it. The angles here were cut at a 45. This beautiful prop actually has these hand-carved legs that were carved in the shop of Carl Owen. Incidentally, Virgil and Carl Owen and John Daniel were in the shop the week that Floyd Thayer died. They actually went to his memorial service. So this really is so much magic history encased, if you will, in this one prop.
You know, that piece of video, that gives me goosebumps, doesn't it, Lance? I mean, doesn't it? And
pretty exciting. It's a pretty exciting.
So I stood behind the oldest sawing of Virgil's, Virgil and Julie's, and you stood behind the most recent, which was the thin saw, which was the second one of Virgil's, Virgil and Julie's, and you stood behind the most recent. Okay, I don't know what that was, but anyway, we met him on the video. Very pleased to have him live, and I think maybe anyway. We met him on the video. Do you have something on there in the background making this echo? Hi, Will. Will Baffle is with us this evening. Do you have a like Facebook feed on or something? Because we're getting a feedback from you on a delay. Go ahead, unmute.
Can you? Okay. I've been having some technical problems, so
okay. So
bear with
now,
me on.
I was hearing everything delayed that I was saying. So
can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Can you hear me well?
You can just give me a thumbs up.
Can you see my thumb, Will?
Okay.
Maybe not. We might be having.
What? Let me try this. I can't
Will, I'm getting the sense that maybe you have.
hear you. I can see your
I'm getting the
Okay.
on my iPad, but I can't try something real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to keep talking and
I tell you what, Lance, why don't you go ahead? I'm going to
Okay.
call Will on the phone. And
Okay.
because
Yeah,
maybe
let's do that.
anyway,
going on at once.
hi
So
everybody.
let's-
I'm Will Baffle.
And I'm going to mute him. And Lance, you go ahead and share some things about our experience. I'm going to try to resolve these technical difficulties with Will on the phone. Okay.
Sure. And that way, since he can see us, maybe if you have him on speaker on the phone, he can still describe the things. So it really was an amazing experience going through, going to Houston, going to Dallas, to be there and to have those three sawings together. Incidentally, I'll mention this: there was a lot of stuff that ended up being in that that storage container that you saw in the video, and some of it is still there, but eventually all of it is going to be coming back here. So it really was an exciting day. Now, Will has, like I said, sort of become the Virgil guy. And a big reason for this is because of one of his mentors and one of his idols, I think, or not idol, one of his mentors in Wichita. And that was a man by the name of Max Armstrong. And many of you might know Max Armstrong. You know what? I hear they're still working that out. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions here. Dick Hatch, you asked whose collection. That's a great question. And that's something that we haven't talked about yet. It was the collection of Ross Wandry. And many of you might have known Ross. And Ross was a big fan of Virgil. He was a big fan of classic magic, and he was also a big circus fan. And so there was a ton of circus memorabilia in that as well, which is pretty cool, because I am excited about circus too. Yes, Kathy.
Yes, I don't know whether you knew this or not, but of course Ross was a real good friend of ours.
Right.
The Virgil things. Anyway, Ross at one time was the ringmaster for the Ringling Brothers Circus.
I did not know that.
Yes. He
Wow.
not only loved magic, but he loved acting. He was in the drama club when he was in school and all of that. And he used to make his own costumes, but he loved the circus, and he was the ringmaster for a number of years. Still,
Really?
even in his later years, he still had a lot of his circus friends who he kept in touch with.
Do you know when he would have been the ringmaster? Roughly?
Gosh, no, I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, that's fine, but that's a great thing to
But
know.
he loved magic.
And you know, there were these
He used to go to the Magic Live conventions too, and he went to some of the magic collectors.
We found some of his registration packets from some of those collector gatherings. So I can't wait. I really am looking forward to going through and really discovering a lot of stuff, because I would say there's probably as maybe not props, but of ephemera, there's as much circus stuff as there is magic.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
And you know, Ross had a fabulous voice, just like Harry Blackstone Jr., who had and David Sarvey. They all had
Yes.
fabulous voices. And if you ever heard Ross speak, you would know exactly who he was.
Oh, that's great. Well, I want to hear a recording of him now.
It's
He was a very
Lance-
nice man too. A very nice man.
Yeah.
Lance, I think we have Will Baffle back.
Okay.
with us. And Will, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can hear you perfectly.
Perfect.
Technology is our friend, even though it gives us headaches from time to time.
So Will, while you and David were working out how this worked, I briefly mentioned to everybody that you sort of became the Virgil guy through, I would say, through Max Armstrong. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Tell us about that.
I've known, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and Max was kind of the only illusionist that I knew, and I fell in love with illusions 30 something years ago. But anyway, whenever I would go over to visit Max and go into his warehouse, he would take me into the warehouse, and he would oftentimes point over to the Eye of the Needle. That was Virgil's. He would also point out various crates that belonged to the Virgil show. Mm-hmm. And one of the first stories that he ever told me about Virgil was he found out Virgil was coming to Hutchinson, Kansas, which is about a 45-minute to an hour drive from Wichita. And I don't know how Max and Virgil met, but somehow Virgil found out that Max was going to be coming to the show. And normally, according to Max, normally when Virgil would set up a show on the weekend, they would oftentimes do a matinee show, and then they would do their full evening show. Well, for the matinee show, typically it would be a smaller show. And once Virgil found out Max was going there, he told his entire crew set up the full evening show, and that's what they did. And there was a time in the middle of the show that Virgil would walk out performing some illusion or some effect, and he knew where Max was sitting at, and so he would walk out there while he was performing, and then he would start whispering to Max Armstrong and like telling Max, wow, you wouldn't believe how much they're paying me to be here. And Max would just be like, shut up and go on with the show. And but during the show, there was like one time where with all their illustrious scenery, that the curtain would open up and it was the wrong scenery, and Virgil would clap his hands and announce, nope, close the curtains. And the curtains would close, and the second that the curtains would close, they would open back up, and the entire stage had changed over scenery-wise. And that was just how well everything worked on the Virgil show. Mm-hmm. And so Max had told me all these stories, and I fell in love with the barrels. And over the years, Max had told me he was thinking of selling off the Virgil, what he called the Virgil collection. And he had, and there's some of the pictures. Yeah. Right there is the Virgil levitation, which had the Virgil levitation couch. Now that couch, believe it or not, that is also a Azra couch. And I don't know if anybody else has ever seen that in performance, but it actually had a very old-fashioned cardboard Azra frame, like a cardboard European frame, if you know what that is. And but Max was wanting to start selling off all these pieces, and I was very interested to purchase the barrels. Oh yeah, there's the sword basket that was made while Virgil was on his world tour. That was made down in Australia. And he was originally going to sell me just the barrels, but then he told me I had to buy the entire collection. And then part of the deal was I had to agree that none of this stuff was just going to sit and collect dust in a warehouse, that it had to all go back on stage for today's audiences to get to see. And I think,
tell us a little bit about the barrel, because the barrels themselves have an interesting history.
They do. This is one of the 3 original sets of barrels that Dante made. Dante. And for Virgil's barrels, and as you've already been hearing, Virgil was an innovator. He constantly would change various props. If he got his hands on something, he was modifying it in very unique and very special ways. With these barrels, from what I've heard from many, many people, are like the smallest barrels you can imagine getting into. My assistant, she thought this was the hardest illusion she's ever trained on. But Dante made these barrels, and I'm sure Mike Caveney could correct me if I'm wrong, but Dante, I believe, took the idea of the Through the Eye of a Needle from P.T. Selbit, and then he took that and he turned it on its side to begin kind of the illusions that we see today. But back then, the rods went horizontal; they never went vertical. And the barrels that you see in the picture is one of the original 3 sets. And oh, I see it being performed on stage. This is the
go
music.
ahead and keep telling us about the history. But
okay,
this track doesn't have audio actually, but just go ahead and tell us more about the history as we kind of watch how you are performing it.
You got it. During what you're seeing, this is kind of like a tribute to Virgil, and the barrels are approximately 75 years old.
Amazing.
They are performance ready. Some of the things that I have noticed about all of the Virgil props is how practical everything is and how fast you can set everything up and tear it down. The levitation, you can set that up in roughly 10 minutes, and that levitation weighs in at around 400 pounds. And the doorway you see behind me, that's On Stage Please, that can set up in roughly 5 to 10 minutes, just very, very quickly. But one of the things that, and I have the letters of instructions that Virgil sent to Max. One of the things that Virgil talks about is that everyone typically would keep the barrels, Dante and Thurston, they would keep their barrels looking the same, with the exception that they would put a number 1 onto one barrel and a number 2 on the second barrel. Well, Virgil felt that to make it simpler for the audience, he would paint one barrel black and the other white. And Dante liked that so much that he decided to change his barrels to be the same way. And those barrels ended up in Tad Ware's collection. To this day, I do not know where Thurston's barrels are. It would be interesting to hear the story regarding that. But those were the 4 illusions I got from Max Armstrong, and it filled up pretty much a entire trailer. I don't know.
So again, everything that we saw in that video, everything on that stage was Virgil's, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And
the way you present this, Will, is that you present this like a night at the museum, where you introduce to the audience, you introduce the legendary Virgil and Julie to people who I'm sure never heard of them because it's generations later, and you pay tribute to Virgil and Julie. Let them look at the props, and then you perform the Through the Eye of the Needle, the barrels. So it's a very fitting tribute to a man that you're so passionate about. And I have to ask you, you know, what I am fascinated and appreciative that you are performing these things, whereas most collectors, you know, including myself, we love to have these things. We love to be curators of these things. We love to look at them and dust them and things like that. But you're actually taking these things out and performing them.
Yep. First off, I'm honoring a promise to Max Armstrong. When I acquired these, I've actually had several people who found out I have these, and they kind of admonished me a little bit that I should put these into a museum and have them preserved. But I always felt that these deserve to be back on stage, and they're just as good today as they were 50, 70 years ago. So yeah, I never set out to be a collector. It just kind of happened in one fell swoop that I ended up with all 4 of these illusions. I ended up with these, let's see, I bought these in 2018 from Max, and I got these 3 weeks after the Potter and Potter auction was selling off everything of Virgil's. And a few of my friends, when they found out I had this, they were all asking, how did they miss seeing these on the catalog? And I was laughing. I was like, they never were on the catalog. And I'm pretty good friends with David Charvet, and he was excited to hear that I was getting these because he knew that they were going back on stage. And for the Museum of Magic, it was actually David who did the voiceover for the entire sequence of actions and stuff on stage.
Well, that's a good voice to have.
Absolutely. And then I just acquired, as you saw in the video earlier, I just this summer acquired the Virgil Sawing in Half. That was the number 3, and that Mark and Marlene traveled with for over 40 years. And it was just in remarkable condition, considering how many hundreds and hundreds of performances that they put it through. And they were teaching me some things regarding that sawing that I had never even thought of before. You know, they felt that the sawing had to be a true sawing, and the saw blade, I mean, it went through the box and then it actually would cut into the table. And after a while, you would see all these little various marks. Can you talk about the purchase tradition? Okay, the purchase tradition, just to jump to that, is that Mark and Marlene, when they were touring and such, they had agreed to purchase the Virgil sawing from Virgil and Julie. And they paid for that sawing in rolls of quarters. And Virgil was just sitting there on his couch, and they kept placing more and more and more rolls of quarters onto Virgil's lap. Well, when I agreed to buy it, I had been making payments online and through PayPal and such, but to keep the tradition alive, the final payment, I showed up at Mark and Marlene's house, and I made the final payment in rolls of quarters, which they thought was fantastic. I felt that tradition had to be maintained.
So I want to clarify something, because there may be a little bit of confusion here. The sawing, when we showed the 3 sawings, and by the way, thank you so much, Will, for allowing Lance and I to stop by Dallas on our way back from Houston, and just all the time and dragging your props out of your warehouse and setting all of that up. It was a wonderful thing to have Virgil's 3 sawings there, probably together for the very first time in a half a century, or pretty close to that.
It's pretty cool. Where it really hit home for me too was like watching the footage back later. I mean, that was pretty great.
Yeah, but I so the sawing, the earliest sawing that I have is what some have considered the grandfather of the Wakeling sawing, this one here. And then you have the next version where the boxes got so much thinner, and then that evolved to the John Daniel version. But mine are number 2 and number 4. You have number 3. People might be asking, well, what about number 1? So let's go to the guy who wrote the sawing book, Mike Keaveney, and by golly, tell us. What the heck where's number 1? We've got 2, 3, and 4.
Well, I don't know. It was either he had a Thayer sawing, a golden style sawing, and he also had a buzzsaw illusion. So is that the ones you mean?
I'm talking about the buzzsaw because we saw a poster earlier where Julie was being sawed in half, or
Yes.
being sawed by a buzzsaw. So the buzzsaw actually came before these two, or these variations.
Yeah.
So when
I can tell you about the buzzsaw.
Yeah,
I can tell you
have
what
David
happened.
tell the buzzsaw story.
All right.
Okay. The buzzsaw, Virgil thought was too dangerous. His method was pretty dangerous as well. As someone who has performed the buzzsaw, I can tell you any version of the buzzsaw is dangerous. But he left nothing, nothing to chance, but he was afraid that somehow, somewhere something would go wrong. So he stopped doing the buzzsaw and packed it away. And then they started doing the first version, which you now have, David, which was in 1942. But that buzzsaw sat in the attic of the warehouse in Olympia for years. And what Virgil did, he figured he didn't need all the timbers and the framing and all that. He got rid of that and chopped it up, and I think he burned it up. The table he kept, the motor he kept, and the saw blade he kept. Well, when I started working on the book, Julie was trying to figure out where all this stuff was going to end up going to. And she wanted to make sure Virgil would be remembered, and particularly in Oregon, because he grew up in Oregon. So I contacted the Oregon Historical Society in Portland, and they were the recipients of the original 16 millimeter films that you saw. The 4 hours of film went to the Historical Society, and they did duplicates for Julie and myself, and I think Kathy now has a set of them, of the World Tour of films. But also, she gave them the buzzsaw, the blade, the 30-inch buzzsaw blade in the crate with Virgil on it, is now resting in the museum collection of the Oregon Historical Society in memory of Virgil. So there you go. But the prop itself is basically, it's gone.
So David, didn't Ravine want to buy that buzzsaw and Virgil wouldn't sell it to him?
That's correct. And Ravine did buy many of the props from the World Tour show, and they were part of the first Ravine Illusion show that he toured through Canada, in the 70s. And he bought a lot of that from Virgil. And also they sold a few things through Jack and Leola Lewayne as well. The sand canisters, those things you saw pictures of, some of those went. But yeah, Ravine wanted to buy it and Virgil would not sell it because he was afraid it was too dangerous.
Yeah, he thought it was too dangerous.
Interesting.
So I'm curious, as we are talking about the first, can we go to the last a little bit? Or I guess it's not the last, because Mike, I think you talk about that Thayer sawing as well, that very briefly. But let's talk about the thin sawing, especially since Kathy is here and David Charvet is here. That thin sawing was what, early 1960s? Late
59.
50s? 59.
1959.
Let me pull that up. So this is actually Virgil performing it.
Yes.
And you see that little step stool there that she used to get in and out of it, David? Right behind David, Sandy.
Right here it is.
Oh, that's it.
There it is. When we were going through the container, the shipping container of all this stuff, we didn't know what went with what. And this, as soon as David Charvet told me, yeah, there was a stool, it's kind of an Egyptian style. I thought, we've got that. There it is. So
we thought it was a broomstick suspension.
Well, actually, behind me over here is Virgil and Julie's broomstick suspension, and I thought maybe it went with that because, let me step back here. I'm taller than Julie, but Julie was a small girl, as Kathy had mentioned. My arms would barely fit over these brooms if I didn't have a stool. So I'm sure there's a stool, and I'm sure it's in the stuff that we have. We just haven't figured out which stool it is that goes with it. So at first I thought maybe this was the stool for the brooms. And then when David Charvet or Mike said, it's Egyptian style or painted like this, and then sent me a picture, I thought, well, there it is.
And I think
Julie got in and out of the thin saw stepping here on this.
And what, David, was it you or Mike who said when she was measured, they cut everything down still by an inch?
That was when, as Kathy said, or somebody said, yeah, when Virgil went down to have it built, they had already measured Julie, but Virgil went down, looked at it, the mock-up, it was half done. He said, take another inch off all the way around.
But he didn't tell Julie that. So when the prop came back after they'd measured it to her dimensions, you know, well, they measured it to me, I can get in here, and she did. And I can tell you, Lance and I, we own, I think, 8 thin model sawings in our collection now. And this one is the most beautiful, most deceptive one of all of them. It is just, I wish you could see it up close. Will can testify to this. You know, he and his friends were there, and it just really is amazing. And another interesting thing about this particular thin saw is that the part that stick out the end, not the head. I'm being careful here, of course, but I think we all know were actually cast from Julie. They're actually Julie. Everything down to the bumps in the skin and the everything about it. It's exactly like that, and it's just amazing that someone would go to that much trouble, which just goes to show you Virgil and Julie's commitment to taking the detail to the nth degree. And Kathy and I were talking on the phone earlier. Kathy, you shared with me that Julie was extremely committed to preserving the integrity of the secrets, the magic, and she didn't want this stuff out there, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, she didn't want anyone, and David knows that too from doing the book, especially when it came to the canary in the light bulb. Remember?
Yes.
Putting that into the book, and Julie said, "Nope, you cannot tell anything about that."
Well, when the year that I spent working on the book, and I'd go up and see her, and one day she said, "Oh, you want to go out in the warehouse?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to." We walked out in the warehouse, walked around the warehouse. She said, "Oh, you see that trunk over there? That's where the canary and the light bulb's at. You see that? That's where the thin sawing's at." She never opened a trunk. She would not show me anything because she wanted to preserve the secrets.
Right.
And I can say this as well. When we were with Will and the sawing there, Will mentioned in his video clip that Lance shared that there are some things about the sawing Will has, which is probably the first generation before it went into what we know as the Wakeling sawing. There are some things about that particular sawing that just cannot be done with the traditional Wakeling sawing. And now that I've seen it, I understand, but I appreciate Will's commitment to preserving the integrity of those secrets as well, because there are just some touches that Virgil put on things that some of the most creative minds, have not replicated. And so it's good to keep that stuff under wraps and held tight. Right?
Well, Virgil and Julie were totally immersed in magic and in that show. And as I said, they never had children, but the show was their child, and they nurtured it and they raised it, and they, wanted to make sure it was the greatest thing that they could ever create. And so unlike a lot of couples who, the guy used to go to work and she stayed at home, they were together 24/7, 365 for 60 years. So they were constantly working on that show, and nothing stayed the same. It always changed.
Now, I'm just curious. I'll ask this to Kathy, Mike, David, and any other historians we have here that might know. From my recollection, I can't think of too many acts of that day, too many magicians that were playing theaters on a very regular basis who shared billing. It was not, for a while it was the Great Virgil, but it very much became the Great Virgil and Julie in the billing. And, we didn't see a lot of that at that time. Mike Caveney, who's a great historian, might correct me here. There might be countless other ones, but I can't think of a lot where Julie actually got equal billing. Now, of course, we have Kaylin and Ginger today, but any thoughts, comments, Kathy?
Well, that's why when you showed the book, that David wrote. And the autograph, Virgil and Julie by Julie. She would not, it was always Virgil. And even after he passed away and we corresponded constantly, at least twice a month, and we would always call her at least once a month, but she would always sign her letters, Virgil and Julie by Julie. But another thing that was not mentioned was that when they were doing the shows, whenever Julie was off stage, she was always breaking down the show and packing it up, especially when it was just the two of them. And by the time the show was over, the whole show, except for that last part, was all packed up and ready to go to travel on to the next show. As tiny as she was, and David, who has been to their home and the warehouse, saw how Julie would move trunks up and down the loft and open up the huge ones. She had rigs set up on pulleys and everything so that as tiny as she was, she could transport these trunks and open them up. You saw her do that, didn't you, David?
Oh, absolutely. The other thing I saw was I arrived one day and she was up on the roof cleaning the gutters at about 80 years old.
Yes.
And I said, Julie, get off the roof.
That's right. She did that constantly.
Yep.
And another thing about Julie, every prop that Virgil built or whatever, she sewed special little pouches for everything. And when we sent off all the Virgil stuff to Gabe for the Potter and Potter auction, I had a bunch of magicians from out here come over and help, and we went through all the trunks, and you could see all these beautiful little pouches that Julie had made for everything.
Actually, when we were with Will Baffle, Will had a bag for pieces of hardware. Maybe it was for the levitation or something, right, Will? A little red bag that
well, I'll take that back. You saw the bag that went to the sawing that I have,
right?
But then the levitation, and for each of the legs, there was a bag that was to wrap around each of the each leg, and then all the hardware was wrapped up in bags. Yeah, there are still pouches around here that all go to the illusions.
But I have to share this. Virgil was he had a great mechanical mind, not only in the illusions, but as David Charvet had said earlier, they rehearsed the packing, the way things were packed. Will was so kind to open up the levitation case to give us a peek inside. And it was a big, long wooden box, not unmanageable, but, had the levitation in it, but there were actually wooden compartments for every component, including the wrench that you put the thing together. The wrench had its only little wooden compartment that went down in, so you could put the levitation in, and everything went in there. It had to go in there in its place. In fact, I chuckled a little bit, not to tell on you and your staff, Will, but they had trouble getting the lid closed because one piece of the levitation was not exactly in there just right, so the lid wouldn't go all the way down. Everything had an exact place, and that's the way it was.
Yep. Yeah, and even for the because I looked at the cases that you have for the thin model sawing, and those cases are big cases. The crate that I have for my sawing is actually a tiny little thing. If you go through like some of the videos that Lance was showing earlier, you'll see crate number 39, and that entire crate fit my sawing in half. Now it's funny to note that Virgil was a great master builder. He was a great performer and everything, but strangely enough, the man didn't know what a handle was, because on a lot of the crates that we have, there are no handles to it. It's just
And I can tell you why.
So you're taking your fingertips and putting them under a little strip of wood, to carry these things.
I can tell you why that is, though. because he was afraid the handles would get ripped off by people. If they get caught on something, they'd get torn off and it would tear the crate up. I had a crate of Virgil's, which was actually the crate that Kathy mentioned that held the nest of trunks, and it had a 1x4 piece of lumber that was bolted to the side of the crate, and that was the handle. Was this 1x4?
Yeah.
You could put your fingers under it and lift it up.
Yeah.
Yep, but it was set out from the crate slightly, but it was made. It reinforced the crate, but it also could be used as a handle. And you saw the film, the World Tour film. You saw how they handled those crates, swinging them out over a dock and dropping them. That's why everything had to have its compartments, and everything had a bag, and it was the way it is. And when they, as Kathy mentioned, when they set up the show, all the crates would be lined up backstage with the lids open, and those little bags would be laying over the lid. When an assistant came off stage with a prop, it was dropped in the bag and put in the trunk. It was never set down, which is how they could get out of the theater 20 minutes after the show. They packed right after it came off stage. Boom, it was in the bag.
Wow,
David?
it's just amazing. It just goes to show you what an ingenious person Virgil was. I've got to ask Mike Caveney. Mike, I'm curious. I've seen pictures over your right shoulder, sitting on the floor there. There's something I'm curious about. What is that? I see the name Virgil there. Can you share that with us before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll show you that in a second. I just wanted to add on to this packing story. When I was writing the chapter about Virgil, I discovered that for a while, Virgil put his brand new thin sawing, he opened the show with it. And you'd think, well, that seems like an odd thing to open with. The reason he did that is because that meant it could be wheeled off stage. And while Virgil was doing something else, it could be broken down and packed back into the trunks, so that if anybody came backstage at intermission, there would be nothing for them to see. Again, all about secrecy. So I have David Charvet to thank for some things of Virgil, and Kathy Daniel to thank for a lot of things. This is as you can see, a big fat scrapbook. Wow. Virgil and Julie World Tour, and they really kind of went all out. The photos aren't just stuck in these pages, but a lot of them are mounted with colored backgrounds, and I mean, it's a real showpiece. And I'm not seeing them, but a whole bunch of these photographs are in color. There's a picture of the Virgil sawing in color. So this is a great record of the World Tour. And back behind me,
I know what that is.
Yeah. 1933 to 1940, 41, and 42. And what it is, great, it's upside down. It's funny, it's got a two-headed cover, but it's window cards from like every city they stopped in.
Oh, wow.
And then lots of newspaper clippings and advertising that goes with it.
Wow.
But
what that
I
is, Mike,
window cards that were actually used. You can see Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
That book was used by Henry Hudson Davis, their
That's
booker,
right,
to book the show. And you imagine walking into some, community group and sitting that down, whomp, on the table,
yeah,
and showing them this show that they could have in their town. Of course,
I'll bet it worked.
Of course, it worked.
Yeah. So, and it's neat to see, how this tour progressed. So that is a beast, and ooh.
Almost like lugging around the Virgil and Julie illusions.
I know. So this is another scrapbook, world tour stuff with, and believe me, nobody loves David's book, the Virgil book, more than I do. It's really fantastic. But 30 years ago, we didn't print books in color. And 30 years ago, when you're writing a book with Julie, as they discussed, you couldn't put any secrets in. And, you know, Julie wanted that book to be a love letter to Virgil. You know, everything was great. And so when I look at all these color photographs now, I'm thinking, boy, we could do a whole other Virgil book.
I'm in. Let's do
Yeah, I know. So anyway, there's lots and lots of stuff.
The chat room is saying, please, Matthew Martin says, please do it.
I know.
I think we could probably find some libraries that would love to have a copy of that book.
I'll bet. So here's stuff that I had before. This is just a binder from Egyptian Hall with lots and lots of Virgil photographs.
Wow.
Some of these came from Egyptian Hall. Some of these, I don't know, I've picked up over the last 50 years.
Is there a picture of the broom levee and a broom suspension in there so I can see what
You
this
know
will
what?
look like?
I'll check, but I don't know. I'm not going to take the time now, but I will check.
Hey, real quick, David. Oh, do you have another one, Mike? Or
That there's
the sawing.
Sawing. And letters. Virgil was a great letter writer,
He was.
and I learned a lot from these letters.
So
Need to convince Mike to let you have a copy of that picture in your basket.
There he is.
Yeah.
College photo.
There is a picture in the Virgil book. Is that okay?
Yeah, there's Julie at about 16 years
Yeah,
old.
she is a young girl.
Wow.
So Ray Ricard, I know. Real quick, let me pull you up here. I know you have.
Hey, how'd you get that, Ray?
Unmute yourself, Ray. Unmute yourself.
I did. Okay. So when Gabe had his big auction there of Virgil stuff, I bought 4 or 5 lots, primarily all the photographs and scrapbooks, tons of letters. I even have Virgil's original beanie for when he was a boy.
Right.
I have some of the very first posters that he had when he did his shows in college, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But we were talking about the world tour. This is a scrapbook that Julie kept of the world tour. Let me see if I can get a better shot of it here. Here we go. And this was every country that they went through. They literally kept all the newspaper articles, all the advertisements from each of the different countries. So she literally goes through and she writes, you know, Singapore and I mean, you'd have to kind of go through it page by page here, but it goes through every single country in any case. From I think it begins in 52, and this particular one ends in 56, I think, or 54. So there's probably another volume after this, which I may or may not have. I don't know. This one happens to be sitting here tonight, but most of that
That's
stuff is
incredible.
actually sitting in the store, so I don't have it here. But it's quite an interesting compilation of materials. And
It's
I
like a
can't read half
companion
of it.
piece, like a
There's a lot
companion
of it.
piece to David Charvet's video.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I also have, you know, David, you mentioned the videos. I have a whole bunch of the reel tapes. I don't know what's on them because they're 16 millimeter or whatever they are. You know, they're like square boxes of camera tape to put in a video machine. But I don't know what's on them. They're Virgil anyway. I don't know if they're home movies or if they're movies of the show or what they are.
If they're
probably
early,
not movies of the show.
yeah,
I'm
if
sorry?
they're not movies of the show, as Mike was
No,
saying.
I know. I don't know what's
It's-
on them because I can't watch them. So
I remember Julie showing me a bunch of small boxes of film when I was up there. And when Virgil managed the Townsend Theater in Port Townsend, again in the early 30s, he would do films every week, like a local newsreel for the town. And he would shoot the film and script the story and do the title cards and the whole bit. And some of those may be what you have. They would be things happening in Port Townsend, Washington in 1930.
Well, I think one of these days I'll get them over to a videographer and see if I can get them put on a modern disc. I can watch them. But the other things that I also got from the same auction, I got the you were talking about earlier that TV show that they had of the magic show there. I have a large presentation scrapbook that was given to Virgil of color photographs from the whole show.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's kind of interesting too, but all kinds of interesting things.
That's great. Well, Ray, thank you so much for sharing that. And Ray Ricard, you win the award, the prize for the best virtual background on Zoom, because that really looks like an impressive library behind you.
Well, fake.
Of course, I'm kidding. That is Ray's library, and it's the most spectacular library I think I've ever seen. I've not seen it in person, but it's just unbelievable.
It looks it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I've learned so much about Virgil this evening, and we want to thank David Charvet immensely for sharing that with us. We want to thank Kathy Daniel. Kathy, do you have anything else? You know, I have to admit, Kathy, I'm so disappointed that your camera is not working. Do you know why?
Okay with me.
Well, because when we talked earlier, you told me, you know, that I said, I have to go shower and get ready for the show. You said, oh, I have to fix my hair and everything. You said, I'm going to put on a nice top, but I may have pajama bottoms on. So I was going to have you, I was going to ask you on the show, Kathy, show us your pants. And just to embarrass you, but your camera's not working.
Actually,
I can't do the gag.
They're Wonder Woman pajama bottoms. Those who know me know I'm the Wonder Woman collector.
Kathy, you should have come over here.
Well, Kathy, you are such a treasure, and I appreciate the stories, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see you when we come back out.
Thank you.
To the area, because I want to hear more stories, and I want to hear more about this beautiful, beautiful prop that I'm so fortunate to have in my collection now. And I want to say this before we wrap it up. This particular auction in Houston, as I mentioned earlier, the auctioneer knew nothing about magic. It's just that he ended up with this stuff to sell, and it was mixed in with, I mean, a magic prop might sell for, you know, $300 or $400. Then the next thing would be a piece of art that would sell for $36,000. It was just.
David, you've got to mention what else was in that collection.
I'm getting there. So when we went down there to pick up the stuff, some of the magic didn't even sell because not a lot of magicians were watching it, including the brooms. They didn't even sell. And many other items. So we got down there to pick up the things that I did buy during the auction, the signs, and one thing that they had listed in the auction catalog was a puppet theater with a bunch of Punch and Judy type puppets. So Lance, do you want to show the picture as shown in the auction catalog of this? And do you have it there handy? Can you pull it up? Because this was just in the auction listing. So this is what was shown, and it was listed by the auction house as puppet theater. I think, well, gosh, I don't know anything about puppet theaters. Maybe that's what they look like. It looked like a magic thing to me. So I bought it thinking it was just a puppet theater, you know, and believe me, there were not a lot of people in the market for a puppet theater. So I got a pretty darn good deal on it. Well, I happened to send these photos of these things to my friend David Charvet and a few other friends, and David messaged me back and said, "That's not a puppet theater. That's Jack Gwynn's original palanquin illusion. In fact, if you send me a picture of the end of it, it should have like some dragons or some art on it." He said, "That's it. I used to own it. That is the very first palanquin illusion." Isn't that amazing, right, David?
It is, and it's that was painted by Dorney.
So you know, I'm thinking I'm just like buying this thing that they call the puppet theater. Now it happens to be Jack Gwynn's very first palanquin. So it's just amazing, and because a year or so ago, I bought the Girl in the Fishbowl, which is basically was Jack Wynn's, which is basically like a palanquin. So now I'm a palanquin collector, I guess, all of a sudden. But it was that kind of auction. So anyway, moving on with the story, I bought things on the auctions. Some things didn't sell, but I noticed in the auction pictures there were like there'd be a sword basket, but I wouldn't see any swords. So I said to the auctioneer, I said, well, there's supposed to be swords with that. He said, look, we have everything. We had to get a shipping container to store it all in. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't even know how to put the stuff together. It took us forever. But if it was there, we have it in the storage container. So I buy this stuff. I go down there, Lance and I drive a trailer to Houston. And I said, all right, so I'm looking for these missing pieces. There were a few things, you know. And so he said, well, let's go out to the shipping container. And we went out there and he opened up the shipping container and it was just magic, filled with magic, just filled with magic. And so he said, look, I don't want to have to catalog this stuff. I don't want to have to photograph it for another auction. I'm at the point where I just want to get rid of it, make an offer, and I'll talk to the seller. And if it's a reasonable offer, it's yours. So the next day we came back to load up the things I purchased and I made him an offer and he called the seller and said, I'd take it. But my offer was this. I got everything that did not sell in the auction that had no bid on it. I got everything in this big shipping container. And basically I said, everything that belonged to the Ross Wandry estate, you know, this is my offer for everything. Well, called the seller, they accepted the offer. So I was pumped. It was like storage drawers. We hadn't even opened up cases. We didn't even know what they were and what was in there. So they start bringing all this stuff out onto the loading dock as Lance and I are taking apart Illusions. And they start bringing out a bunch of things. Hang on just a second. They start bringing out tables. Kathy's laughing. With this kind of stuff on it.
What got that from me?
This metal, wood, carvings, tables full of this stuff.
Yes.
And I'm down on my hands and knees with a crescent wrench taking apart Jack Wynn's first palanquin. I see them dragging all this stuff out. And I said to Lance, I said, what the hell is all this stuff? Come to find out, Ross Wandry was big into African art. And when I made the comment, my offer was for everything in the Ross Wandry estate, I didn't know that there would be a trailer load full of African art, which ironically came from John and Kathy Daniel. So you guys are big African art collectors.
John was.
You can take it or leave it, right?
Yes. Mike, are you laughing about it?
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh.
Are you laughing about that?
Yeah, every time I go to Kathy's house, we walk through that.
I told David and Lance earlier today that they need to, next time they come to town, they have to come over here.
Yes.
But I saw Russ used to call me every week. And he'd say, do you have any so from this tribe? And I said, well, I don't know. Let me go look and see. And then I would take pictures for him and send him stuff. I sent him one piece one time that was 7 feet tall. And I took it to my UPS guy. And I said, can you ship this to Houston? And he goes, sure. And he did. So I was really happy about getting rid of a bunch of that. I probably sold him 60 pieces.
Kathy, you've got a room full left.
I know.
And it smells bad.
It smells like Africa.
Well, I have to say, I'm looking here. I don't see it. Oh, I thought I had a picture on my phone. I'd hold my phone up, but maybe Lance has it, of one 5-foot piece.
I think you're talking about this piece.
Yeah, your ring. All right, this is one piece. I don't know if you can see it. He's almost as tall as myself and Lance. That we did bring him home, and these two pieces here.
Yeah.
So, but there's a ton of this stuff.
I know.
It's cool.
We're going back, but it's cool. It's cool. And you know, here's what I think about it. You know, we as magicians, when I saw the Virgil signs and Mike came and he said, this was Virgil's, you know, this is like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And so I am honored at a beat up old wooden box. I'm talking about the first one, but it's like, you know, an African art collector might look at something like this and go, oh my God, that's from the tribe, whatever, and look at something like this and say, oh, that'll make a good step stool for the kids. So I guess it's all what we're passionate about. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to wrap this up with a couple of contests because, you know, we have some prizes to give away. And here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do a really quick speed share. And here's the speed share. I want to see something, and I'm going to give you an example, a utility prop. It is not the trick. For instance, here is something I got at the auction in Ohio. It's just a handkerchief pedestal. Most of you know what it is. You know, the glass goes on it. You know, handkerchief is vanished. This is covered. And the pedestal itself is what causes the magic to happen. This isn't the trick. This is the utility device. So if anyone has a speed share along those lines, it could be something like this. This is a stool. Very collectible. This is what Julie used to step up into the thin saw. If you have something like that, let's see it real quick. And everybody who shows us a speed share, we're going to move through these real quick.
All right. I see a hand up here.
Into a contest. And Lance, show them. We're going to do a random drawing. We're going to write down everybody who shows something that we have time for. And Lance, show them what they get. Courtesy of Bill Smith. Tell them
this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. So this is a map of David Copperfield's museum and well, his museum. It's a map that was designed and the artwork was done by David Starr, and it is really detailed and it's really beautiful. And these were sold at the Magic Collector Corner, or I'm sorry, the Magic Collector Expo in Las Vegas. And you can buy them still. Actually, Lupe Nielsen, you can go to Nielsen Magic and she is selling them now for Bill. But the winner of this speed share contest gets one of these maps. And I see we have a hand raised. I see Andrew Gill. So Andrew, oh, you're going to have to start your video there, but what do you have? Let's see. Well, Tom Conley has his hand up and I see his video is on. So Tom, let's go to you. And
unmute yourself, Tom. Tom, unmute yourself.
There you are. You're unmuted now. Yep. What do you have?
This is something maybe you've never seen, I would imagine. Can you see it?
We can see it. What is it?
How many people know what that is? That is a cornucopia loader.
Really?
This clips on the table. The flowers or the silks or whatever you want's in here. And when you put the cornucopia down, you click, it hits this lever and this flips up and shoots it into the phone.
Wow.
That's kind of different.
That's very different.
That is very different. Thank you, Tom.
That came from the Dante Ranch.
Oh, really?
That came from the Dante Ranch?
Yeah.
Really? I'll show something on the next Magic Collectors Corner that came from the Dante Ranch that I'm proud of. All right, who else?
All right,
do you have, Lance?
Paul Draper. Let's go to Paul Draper. Paul, go ahead and unmute yourself.
So this is a wrapping hand that belonged to John Rock, the brother of Will Rock, and he used it with a French guillotine, not as an actual wrapping hand.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's funny.
All right.
So it's a sight gag.
Thanks, Paul. That's
Thank
pretty
you.
cool. Andrew Gill, I see you have video now. Let's unmute yourself. And
Yeah,
what do you have?
I have a little bit of a collection, if I spin around, of some of the
Virgil and Julie.
Oh, wow.
Favorite one is actually, I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and this is a picture of them in Perth, Western Australia.
Cool.
And then a picture of Virgil with a koala.
Wow.
With a koala.
Yeah. Most of this is all thanks to Kathy Daniels.
Well, very cool. That's great. Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew,
Thank
do
you.
you need any African art by chance?
I've
Kathy-
been to Kathy's house many times, and yes, I've seen a lot of that African art.
All right. All right.
A
Thank you,
small
Andrew.
collection of the magic that's here.
Wow.
Oh, wow, that's great.
We need to tour your place sometime. All right. Blair Marshall. Blair has his hand up. Blair, oh, what is that? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Blair.
Want to do it? Something for Kathy. John's headpiece from Shazam.
Wow.
Look at that. Put it on, Blair.
Now, Blair, you are continuing the Shazam show legacy, correct?
We've got part of it here, yes.
That's great.
That's pretty cool. That's cool. Thank you, Blair.
It's very cool.
All
Kathy,
right.
remember that?
Oh, I think she's muted right now.
Okay. So anyone else want to show something?
Cato Holler, I think, has something. Cato, what do you have? Let's unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. This belonged to Walter Zany Blaney. Instead of using a magic wand to create an effect, he had a magic salt shaker. This contained rice as a little disc in the top piece of paper, and it would make a noise whenever he shook it.
It's great.
But this belonged to Walter Blaney.
Very good. Walter, great guy. We miss him.
We do.
Thank you, Cato. I love, if you haven't seen Cato's place, we were there at an earlier Magic Collectors Corner. Go back and watch the video because it's just spectacular. He's got a great collection, beautiful layout.
All right, David. So those are, I see Ray Ricard is waving his hand. Ray, what do you have?
So I'm assuming this fits the deal. So this is it's a rising deck of cards, but it's got one of those, as I drop it. Anyway, I didn't say it was a magician. I'm just a collector. But it's got the weights in the back, which go up and down.
Uh-huh.
The cards, and then it has the little piece on the front to make the card rise. So I'm assuming that fits with as a utility piece.
It works for me. All right. All right. So
Renee-
it's the demo that sells it, right, Ray?
That's it.
All right.
Anybody else, Lance? You see?
Yes,
I got
Renee
the word.
Clement.
Oh, hey. All right. Remember the anti-gravico, those little plastics you put on the Coke bottle and you turn it upside down? This is an older version for milk bottles. This, and even comes with, instead of a toothpick, a little metal thing. Can you see that you use? And, well, there's the instructions for and so it's the anti-gravico to use with an old milk bottle that you don't see anymore on those things. But that was
And opposed to the pop bottle where that snapped on, did just the physics cause that to?
Yeah, I don't know. It says insert the metal screen in mouth of quart bottle.
Gotcha.
And then of course with the instruction. Can you
So yes, there's a little lip in classic milk bottles. My family had a ranch and had milk bottles we put out to the community. And you would just put that on that lip, turn it upside down, and it would hold. Yep.
Yeah. And it's white to help, I guess, disguise the thing. And again, it came with this little metal thing so that you can do, you let it show that there's no, nothing really solid covering it. That was an interesting thing I had for years, and I never used it. I got it at some auction back in the 70s, and I just kept it.
All right. All right. Thank you, Renee. Let's see. I saw oh, my screen just shifted. Sean, is this Sean Hull?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Sean, let's see what you have here.
All right. Give me just a second here. This is a well, it's another rising card. You can see it's kind of slow, but what this is it's a little Richard Himber solid gold gimmick, and that could be just clipped onto the back of a borrowed card case here.
Wow.
And it's just got a little wheel, and it runs silently. It's just a pretty little little device to attach and create a rising card deck out of a borrowed deck.
That's fantastic. Great. I love that.
And then I see Jeffrey Sadowski has one. Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
Jeffrey, what do you have?
I have actually have Virgil's Find the Lady or Find the Queen, the Thayer version, which is not very many of them are around anymore because they're basically made of wood and paper. But look at that.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And this was Virgil's? This was Virgil's?
Yes. This is Virgil's. This is Virgil's. Actually, if I can, hang on a second. I actually have Virgil's case, which basically Virgil used to use a lot of the military type of, I guess you could say belts or whatever. And this was the case that he kept those cards, which are these 3 cards. Actually 1, 2, and 3. And like I said, these are all Thayers, and they're very, very old. I was told that they're kind of rare because they're made out of basically a very cheap paper. And watch this. This is so awesome.
It's very visual. It's
yes, and watch this one. Look. Oh no, that one's the one that's stiff. I'm sorry. Here we go. Oh, and here we go. It didn't go that time. Yeah. All right. But this one works perfectly.
It's great.
That's cool.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
I'm very embarrassed. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And we've got time for one more. It's Gene Vosh.
Gene Vosh, what do you have? Go ahead and there you go. Unmute yourself.
Okay, so what I wanted to show you is I actually make those bottles that they were selling the tops for.
Yeah.
And I actually make these and sell these. Pint size, or you get the full gallon. It works very well. A hydrostatic bottle.
All right. All right.
Okay, so Lance, here's what we're going to do. We have 10 people who shared in our speed share. So I wrote them down in a random order on this piece of paper. I'm going to have the lovely Kathy Daniel. Unmute yourself, Kathy, and just pick a number between 1 and 10.
4.
4. All right, I'm going to show you here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ray Ricard, you're number 4. You win the David Copperfield map, courtesy of Bill Smith. Congratulations.
That's it.
Yeah, there it is.
Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. And the thing about it is, if you actually want one of these, you know, as Lance mentioned, Lupe has these. They're a great collectible piece. There's not a lot of them out there, but this is a great collectible, particularly if you were at the Magic Collector Expo this year and got to experience it for yourself. But Bill Smith also has some that are signed by the David Starr, who drew it up, and David Copperfield. So you'll want to contact Bill Smith if you want one of those. It's a great bargain. It's just really, it's got Copperfield's signature on it.
And it's on that one, the signed one is on a heavier
Yes.
art paper there.
So you would just email Bill, bs@magicventures.com, BS as in Bill Smith, as if I had to say that, at magicventures.com. If you forget it, email me and I'll put you in touch. But if you want one of those, or you can go to Nielsen Magic and get one of the other ones. Great piece to your collection. Now, we've got even more things to give away. Lance, what do you have?
I have Secrets Magicians Could Tell. This is the latest book by Jim Hagee. And as you know from his other books, the Evanian book and Fair Tricks, all of his books are really well done. They're beautifully designed and beautifully laid out. So you could win this, or
Is Jim
David.
on here? Jim's on here tonight, I think, isn't he? Yeah, he's on here. Jim, unmute yourself and just tell us just a little bit about what the book's about.
Thanks. Hey guys, thanks for doing all of this. This is a little bit out of my normal lane of traffic, which is writing about obscure magicians of the past, but it has 75 historical illustrations, and it really is written in part for a non-magic audience as well as magicians. It reflects on something all of the people participating tonight know, which is that performing when you're young or at any age as a magician prepares you for the skills you need to talk to any audience on any subject, a business audience, an academic audience, your brother-in-law's wedding, people down the street, whatever. And so it looks at what you would think of as pre-show and post-show, what we learn, what we experience as magicians through trial and error that affects giving an effective presentation in real life. So it's had a good reception from non-magicians, which is its primary audience, but also magicians have been kind enough to say good things about it on social media and in reviews. So it has 75 plus or minus historical illustrations, and it's very lighthearted. Obviously, it's got a lot of anecdotes about magic history.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim, so much for donating. We're going to give away 2 of those this evening. We're also going to give away 2 of these. This is courtesy of Steve Schlanger and Bill Bowers, and who were very good friends.
Yeah.
Who were very good friends of the Professor Dave Vernon. These are the cards that Dave would give away. As you can see, it's like almost like a postcard here. We're going to give away 2 of these. And we want to thank Steve and Bill Bowers for donating these. And we're also going to give away 2 of these. These are stamps. I don't know if you remember these. These are the lenticular stamps. See how you tilt it and the rabbit disappears? There's 3 of them on there.
So how do we win?
I'm gonna tell you. So we've got 6 prizes here. We got 2 of Jim's great books. We've got 2 of the Vernon postcards. We've got 2 of the stamps. And here's what we're gonna do. So you get your pencil and write this down. All right. I'm gonna see how well you're paying attention to Virgil and Julie this evening. So I have 3 questions based on what we learned this evening. If you answer all 3 questions correctly by emailing me with the correct answers, then you will be, if we have 6 correct answers with all 3 questions right, each of you get what prize. If we have 12, we'll do a drawing. You get the idea. But here are the 3 questions. Write them down. Are you ready? I'll give you just a second here. And by the way, you're going to email me at david@davidsandy.com with your answers. david@davidsandy.com. Question number 1. What was Virgil's last name? David Charvet shared that at the beginning of his talk. What was Virgil's last name? Question number 1. Question number 2. What was Virgil and Julie's lion's name? David shared that with us. See, if you really want to work hard, you can go back and watch the video after we post this on Facebook. All right. Virgil's lion's name is question number 2. And question number 3, who did Virgil and Julie give the lion to when they figured out that they were not going to use the lion in the show anymore? What magician did they give the lion to? So question number 1, what was Virgil's last name? Question number 2, what was the lion's name? Question number 3, who did they give the lion to? It was all in tonight's program. Email me, david@davidsandy.com. And if I have more than 6 correct answers, we'll do a drawing for Jim Hagee's book, the Vernon postcards, and the stamps, the lenticular stamps. With that said, Lance, 3 hours and 16 minutes.
Not the longest, but we were moving along too. We were moving along, but we got to
there was so much great content on
yes.
here.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot.
we just love the stories from Kathy and David, all his research and everything that went into this, and Mike Caveney, and just everybody who participated in this.
Yeah,
Will
so-
Baffle, we want to thank Will. Million thanks for opening up not only his home, we went by his home and saw his great Virgil stuff, including parts of the barrels, the Dante barrels, and then to the warehouse. It was just great time. So,
And also, quick thanks also to Matthew and to Brian, who did not show up in time to help us build the sawings, but they did film that footage and took those pictures. So that was
yeah,
a
it was
lot of
kind of
help.
funny when we were all heading from Will Baffle's apartment over. They were there, and Will said, "Are you guys going to go over with us?" "No, we'll just hang out here." Well, just about as we were putting the last bolt in the last sawing, they called and said, "Hey, we think we'll come over." They timed that out perfectly, but they did do a great job on videoing for us. So we appreciate that. So anyway.
So anyways, thank you all for joining us. I've learned a lot, and it's been a lot of fun. I was really excited about this one, and
good stuff.
It's been a lot of fun.
And Lance, we have to say that we are working on something. If you're not on our email list, you should be. Email me, david@davidsandy.com. Say, add me to the Magic Collectors Corner email list, because we may have something next month. We're working on something for next month. And
Yeah, I have something I want to share with everybody that was, I mean, our show tonight was so full. So, but it's kind of a cool thing.
It's really a cool thing. So thanks to everybody that participated. Thanks for everybody that joined us. And we will probably see you in November. I hope you have a wonderful, magical Halloween. And we're looking forward to seeing our friend Bill Rauscher in New London, Connecticut this week for the Milburn Schiffer banquet. And
good luck on the auctions.
Good luck on the auction. Yeah. On the
Auctions. So,
yes, the Ricky
yeah.
J auctions this week too.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, real quick too. NEMCA is coming up as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We want to promote that. That is, I believe, on Saturday, November the 6th. It's the NEMCA, the Yankee Gathering. We'll post the link to the website.
November 6th, and it's a virtual convention.
It's a virtual convention, and there'll be lots of great stuff. They do such a fantastic job, and Lance and I will be a part of it. We'll post all that information on our Magic Collectors Corner Facebook page. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you sticking around with us on the extended show tonight. It's good to see everyone. Be safe, be well, be kind to one another, and enjoy the magic. Good night.